Hello and welcome to Sports Illustrated's NBA Draft Special. I'm your host, Chris Mannix, and we'll be here throughout the duration of the first round talking the NBA and reacting to the draft picks we're going to see live as they happen. We've got lots of great stuff in store for you, including some advice on gambling from our friends at The Line, some SI staffers playing pranks on Knicks fans, that's just too easy, and even interviews with some of the biggest names in the draft. Now, let's introduce my friends. They'll be joining me this evening. We've got Rohan Nadkarni, the host of Crossover TV and the Dwayne Wade superfan. Woo! Next to him, Dave Yeager, former coach of the Sacramento Kings, and here to provide his insight into the draft, into the NBA draft experience, and look at some of the team needs. On my other side is John Rothstein, college basketball insider. And next to him is Frank Martin, the current head coach of the University of South Carolina men's basketball team. Guys, how are we feeling tonight? We feeling good here? We're all dressed in blue. Do you feel like
it kind of looks like we went to Joseph A. Bank and got the buy 3, get 1 free deal, you know? We all picked out a blue suit.
The gray one, the free one?
That's what you're saying. 3 and then the other one. All right, now we'll also be periodically checking into our other studio where Madeline Burke and Jake Fish will be hanging out all night, ready to break down some of the prospects and give us our social media fix. Jake, are you guys ready for what's going to happen tonight?
Ready for all the trades, Chris.
It's going to be a lot going on. Also, clearly, we did not get in on this Joseph A. Bank deal. I feel a little bit left out, but that's cool.
I'm going to need you guys to ramp up the energy a little bit there. That Jake Fisher, the one-sentence line there. Let's give me a little more, Jake. How many trades?
I feel like he needs a little media training here.
I'm ready for a potential NBA record, 14 first-round picks.
There we go.
There it is.
Wow. Okay, there we go. Dropping stats. It's like
I think we've already. I lost track. We had 3 even entering today. We had 2 just now, so I think we're like already at 6.
They're coming through pretty fast.
Yeah, they are. All right, that's exactly what we're going to get into next. There already have been a bunch of trades, and let's start with the big one, guys. Atlanta taking the Pelicans' number 4 pick, dealing number 8 and 17 away in the process. Dave, you've seen the Hawks up close over the last couple of years. I like what Travis Schlenk is doing, being ambitious with some of these drafts. He makes a deal to get Trae Young last year. Early on, looked like a tough one, but Trae Young certainly proved himself in the second half of the season. What do you think of this move, another by Travis Schlenk on draft night?
I think Travis is doing a great job, and Lloyd develops players very well. So as they using some of these picks, moving up in some of their picks, developing players, but it's Trae Young's team, and they're going to put players around him that fit with the culture that they want. But it's all about putting the best pieces they can around Trae Young.
What do you think that team needs right now as it tries to jump to that next level?
They just got to keep developing their players because there's going to come a point, you can't just get it right now as sophomores and rookies. They let them be in the league a year or 2 years, and now you add that veteran piece, a size guy that can really rebound and get it out. But they're always going to want to keep the floor spread for him, so they're almost always going to have a stretch 4 on the floor.
John, they move up to number 4, and that's been kind of an ambiguous spot for the last few weeks with us kind of knowing who's going to go inside that top 3, but a lot of different names have been tossed around at number 3. Or number 4. What do you think they're looking at the 4th?
Well, the 4th safest commodity outside the top troika in this NBA draft is DeAndre Hunter out of Virginia, like a queen on a chessboard defensively because of what he can do on the floor from different spots. I think when you looked at this NBA draft, we knew that there were 3 players at the top of the board who were can't-miss prospects, but from talking to several NBA people the last couple of days and weeks, everybody seems to be in agreement that DeAndre Hunter is the guy who's the 4th safest commodity in this draft.
I'd like to point out that John's been trying to use the word troika all during reharsal.
John's got like metaphors. He's got all kinds
we got a big show. We got a big show.
We got a long show.
I just want to hop in here. I'm curious what this move means for New Orleans. I think we all kind of assumed, or at least I did, that they were going to move that number 4 pick maybe for a more established guy, maybe a veteran or something. Not, they still have Drew Holiday on the roster. I'm a little. You can almost have too many young guys sometimes, in my opinion. Yeah. They have 3 right now, right, with Hart, Ball, and Ingram. They have Zion coming in. And 2 more first-round picks to add to that. That to me seems like almost too much. Like I thought they'd go for a more established guy there.
What do you think, Frank, of DeAndre Hunter at that spot at number 4?
I think it's a guy that you can't go wrong with. High character guy, comes from a winning pedigree. I'm a big believer on improvement. Yeah. He's shown that he got better every year. Yeah. That means that he's going to get to the NBA and continue to get better. At least that's the way I kind of look at things. And he's a winner. And then he's got size. Today's NBA, I'm not, Dave, you see it. I kind of see it when I'm kind of tired of watching my team play. But he's got length, athleticism. He's interchangeable defensively, can defend ones through probably fours and maybe even fives. And he's got that intangible. He can really shoot the ball from the perimeter. So when I sit around and I listen to people talk NBA basketball, they talk about the guy that can defend positions and make corner threes. Right. I think he's tailor-made for that.
You know, it's interesting, too, because so much discussion really throughout basketball the past couple of weeks, and we're seeing it almost daily right now, is kids wanting to bypass college to play professionally immediately and being in a situation where they can be a professional. Here's somebody who redshirted, sat out his first year, got progressively better, and saved his best for when it mattered most in the national championship game, had 27-9. 21 made threes as a redshirt freshman, 46 as a redshirt sophomore. He is really the polar opposite of what we're seeing right now. And like I said, the fourth known commodity in the 2019 NBA draft.
And Dave, to Frank's point, the value of defensive versatility, I mean, how big is that for a team to have?
Well, you know, it gives the world is very switchable right now. There's more switching going on in our game than there ever has been, and so it's a lot more difficult to switch a 6'2" guy than a 6'5", 6'6" guy that can play, you know, 4 positions defensively. I think also coming in with that corporate knowledge, that an experience that he has at the defensive end, I think it's more difficult for a young player to learn the defensive schemes that you're trying to be in the help position and have that experience of when to help, when not to overhelp and give up threes. That sometimes takes longer than teaching guys different sets, and when he comes in with that, I think that's only going to help him.
And not to use history, but those Virginia guys that have played under Tony Bennett, Klay Thompson under Tony Bennett, they've adapted to the NBA pretty quickly.
Also, isn't there someone to be said, and you can attest to this better than anybody, but wouldn't you want to put value in a winner and somebody who has had that type of situation? Like, one thing that's really swept under the rug, and I understand people from the periphery aren't looking at this as much, but this is the guy who didn't play when Virginia lost to UMBC. This team ripped through the ACC like a chainsaw through butter 2 years ago, won the league by 4 games over a Duke team that had Bagley, Wendell Carter, Trayvon Duval, Gary Trent Jr. He goes down, DeAndre Hunter does. They lose to UMBC, obviously one of the great upsets that our sport has seen, but it was never talked about at the length that it should have been, that their lottery pick, their alpha, did not play. He comes back. He's the best player in the national championship game.
All right, one of the other deals that went down already that we know about is the Phoenix Suns, who've been very active at this point. They move off T.J. Warren. They trade him to Indiana as part of a deal that gets them the 32nd pick. They move off that T.J. Warren contract. They also move the 6th overall pick to Minnesota in exchange for a package that includes Dario Saric. Rohan, what do you think of what the Suns have done the last hour or so?
Well, I'm really excited to see, you know, what kind of trouble the Suns can get into tonight. No one ever really seems to understand their motives. They still have, like, for 18 months now, how long has it been? They just haven't had a point guard on the roster. It seemed like maybe that they'd want to take one tonight. Now they're moving back in the draft. It's interesting. I don't know that it gets them anywhere closer to, like, finally. Here's the thing about the Suns. Every time they win a basketball game, I'm surprised. I'm like, oh, the Phoenix Suns won tonight. And now when they do moves like this, I'm still just at a loss for what is the plan here? At what point are they going to start putting together, you know, an actual 5-man group on the floor? The number 6 pick seemed like a time, hey, you know, get your point guard or something along those lines. To me, it signifies there's probably no one they're in love with. They feel like the guy they want at 6, they can get at 11. Saric, I think, is actually a good, underrated player, but when it comes to Phoenix, I want to see what they do before I give them any applause or any praise, because they're always liable to do something crazy.
Yeah, Dave, it does surprise me a little bit that we're seeing Phoenix, which has been point guard star for years now, pass on the opportunity to grab a Colby White at that position. What do you think of that?
Rohan, you brought up the point about New Orleans. What are they doing? I think Phoenix is doing something similar. I think guys in that wheelhouse at 4, 5, 6, 7 are your wing players, and I think both teams. When you talk about Ingram being over there, Drew Holiday playing 2 with Ball playing 1, and the point guards are available there, and then I think the bigs come down at 9, 10, 11, somewhere in there. Both teams have traded back into that area where they get a couple of your guys that you kind of like.
What do you think about that area, Frank? The number 6 slot, Colby White, maybe?
I'm a big Colby White fan. You know, I think he's. I think your team is identified through your point guard, and he's a high-level competitor. I mean, just on the go. Now, he's got to be on a team that plays with pace. He loves to push. He loves to run You know, if he ends up on a team where they're trying to run sets every single time, it's not going to really fit him from day one. I'm a big, like when we recruit, getting young players in the open court is a lot easier for them as they learn to play basketball. And especially as they're trying to make the adjustment to play at a different level, different competition. You know, and but I love Kobe White. I'm a big fan.
What do you think, John?
Great hair for Kobe White, first of all, which definitely stands out. But he's so different than other point guards that Roy Williams has had at North Carolina, and it says an awful lot about somebody if you're a freshman point guard, if you're dictating how well your team is going to perform. He goes 0 of 7 in the Sweet 16 against Auburn, and they lose. 35% from downtown as a freshman, and great size at 6'5", much bigger than some of the other guys who came into the NBA under Roy Felton, Ty Lawson, those roadrunner types that really changed speeds.
Well, so this is what's funny because we're talking about how good of a prospect he is, and it's just weird to me that Phoenix wouldn't want to take a chance on him. I mean, I'm interested to see what Minnesota does with this pick. I mean, I like the deal for Minnesota. I mean, they weren't playing. I don't think they were using Sarge enough in the right way. I thought he should have gotten more time at the 4, so I'm interested to see how they use this. Maybe they go for someone like White. I mean, I think Jeff Teague's an expiring, so they could use someone there. But I like the trade for the Wolves. We haven't really touched on that, but I think it's a good trade for Minnesota.
I like the deal for Minnesota. Gerson Rojas trying to put his stamp on that team as they try to rebuild with Ryan Saunders as the head coach out there. All right, now before we get to the actual draft, which is on the clock right now, Zion Williamson expected to be the #1 overall pick. Let's check in with our friends on the line to get some more information.
What up, big spenders? Ben Teitelbaum and Nick Kostos here for The Line. We know there are plenty of NBA mock drafts out there, but which mock makes the money? We're going to take a quick look at some of the more interesting player props and see if you, and well, us, can turn picks into profit. And Nick, let's start here. Let's talk strategy.
Let's do it.
1, 2, 3, they seem to be locked. That's how Vegas has it. Huge juice if you want to bet those guys anywhere outside of the top 3, because DeAndre Hunter, who he's been climbing up draft boards. You know, some over-unders had him as high as 4.5. Maybe he would be the 4th pick. Right now, his line is at 5.5. Does DeAndre Hunter then jump Culver if that pick gets traded, or is it 4 Garland, 5 Culver, and then Hunter outside of the top 5?
That is my expectation, and I expect Hunter to go number 6 to the Phoenix Suns. And I want to start there, if you'll allow me to, at number 6. The Phoenix Suns have a conundrum on their hands. That conundrum...
The Phoenix Suns always have a conundrum
on their hands. I mean, seriously. Devin Booker, do you realize that Devin Booker is entering his 5th year already in the NBA, and the Suns have yet to surround Devin Booker with enough talent to let him win basketball games? If I'm the Phoenix Suns, and who the hell knows what the Suns are going to do, but my expectation is they're going to take someone that can come in and can contribute right away. I expect that player to be DeAndre Hunter. But now to number 5, John Beilein and the Cleveland Cavaliers. We remember back in March when Texas Tech played against Michigan. Remember what Jared Culver did to the Michigan Wolverines? Absolutely embarrassed them. John Beilein had a front row seat to that, and I think John Beilein will look to add Jared Culver out of Texas Tech with the 5th overall pick to the Cleveland Cavaliers.
All right, last player for us, and this is potentially the most interesting one. Cam Reddish. He was the consensus number 3 guy behind his 2 Duke mates, Zion Williamson, RJ Barrett, coming into the season. Started sliding, started falling, seemed sort of lost in games, didn't assert himself. And then you saw this sort of polarization of talk around Cam Reddish. He's got all the tools to be an NBA player, except maybe the mentality. Was he in a bad fit at Duke? Does he need to be a #1 guy? Or maybe he was just overrated. Right now, his line is 7.5. Apparently, the Hawks at 8 are interested in him. Will a team reach? What do you think?
Well, I think as a concern specifically, the Hawks are looking to potentially move up also. So I don't even know that the Hawks will be picking there at number 8 potentially to take Cam Reddish. Maybe they move up to take a blue chip prospect. This is an answer, and I loved, again, the way you asked that first question was how do you kind of pose all of these? Like, what are the methods that you use? And I said, take it on a case-by-case basis. This is a case basis where we take it by what we've seen with all the expert mock drafts out there, including our guy Jeremy Woo here at Sports Illustrated. There's a consensus here of the top 7 players. It's RJ Barrett, Zion Williamson, John Morant, Jared Culver, DeAndre Hunter, Kobe White.
I noticed the name missing there.
The name missing there is Cam Reddish. Reddish is at best the 8th player in this draft, so I think it is a very safe bet. I actually love this bet quite a bit that Reddish goes outside the top 7. I think number 8 is the first spot where we'd see him picked. And again, the Bulls at number 7, they want a point guard. Does Cam Reddish play point guard? No, he does not. I think Reddish goes outside that top 7.
There it is. You heard it from Nick Kostos. And if you want to check to see whether he knows what he's talking about, just rewind some of the lines we've had. He's been on fire this spring. And don't forget to stick with the line. We'll be back after a bit of a summer hiatus for all your football needs. Nick will be picking them correctly as he did right here, right now. Happy drafting.
All right, the NBA draft is officially underway, and the first pick is Zion Williamson out of Duke, widely expected, long believed to be the #1 overall pick in the draft. Frank, let me go to you first. A lot of hype around Zion Williamson. Does he have the substance to live up to that hype?
Hands down. I think he's a star from day one. He's got a great mind for the game. I used to tell people in high school, they're all enamored with his YouTube dunking videos. He makes the right play. His passing, that's what makes him so hard to guard him off the bounce, is that he can pass the ball. So if you overhelp, he hits it's a right pass to the right player. He can rebound it. Foul trouble has always been something that's plagued him. So defensively, he's going to have to make a huge step forward. But he's such a competitor and such an intelligent. His IQ, guys that are smart get better. And his IQ's off the charts. And his work ethic, solid family, unbelievable mom. He's a great kid. I think he's a star from day one.
John, can't miss?
Can't miss prospect, a cultural phenomenon in a lot of ways in college for the way he was able to pull people in from the periphery. People who necessarily weren't thinking about watching college basketball early in the season in November, December, they were pulled in by Zion Williamson. The most underrated part of his game, though, how good he is defensively. That's where Duke really missed him when he was out for 6 games, his ability to get in the passing lanes, block shots. And the big thing I go back to is this. This Duke team did not have veterans around it to help people like Zion and R.J. Barrett get things across the finish line. They had to undertake that responsibility.
To his point, his competitiveness defensively is what got him in foul trouble because he doesn't get out of the way. Well, he's so competitive. He never takes a play off.
Dave, you didn't have to look far to see Zion games, Zion highlights.
No.
Zion was everywhere this past year. When you got a chance to see him on film, what did you see?
Well, I really enjoyed watching his competitiveness in the tournament. He was not going to let his team lose, and that was one thing that really stuck out to me this year. Obviously, the athleticism and playing the passing lanes. The NBA is made for the way he plays.
Yes.
It's positionless. Is he a 3? Is he a 4? Can he play 2? He's going to bring the ball up in broken floor situations. You're not going to be able to stand in front of him. When he figures things out and the game slows down for him, and I think the sky's the limit for him.
Rowan, when you see what the Pelicans are now trying to rebuild there, Zion being their centerpiece of that rebuild. How big is it to have a guy like that?
It's huge. I mean, you guys are talking about his competitiveness. When you have a player like that, you also need to be a culture setter to a degree. I'm thinking of, I'd love if Alvin Gentry took a page out of Coach Yeager's playbook and really, kind of push them, make them run fast, kind of like what, Coach Dave did with De'Aaron Fox. I mean, you think about the Kings. I think of De'Aaron Fox as one of those guys who's very competitive, and you kind of saw the team, even though he was a sophomore guard, take on his disposition. I think that's what's so great about the Pelicans. If they can have a team that takes on Zion's disposition, they're in a good place there. I'm already thinking of lineups that are going to be really fun to watch. I mean, if they put Drew Holiday, Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, Zion, and Brandon Ingram on the court at once, they might not be able to defend anyone, but that team is going to be fast. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think they're getting not just a great pick, but they're getting a culture set.
And Dave, I think they will embrace that style of play. I mean, Alvin Gentry's inclination is to play fast. It's kind of where the school that he kind of came out of, beginning with Mike D'Antoni and moving on to Golden State. Now he has the horses to play that fast.
You're going to see a bunch of highlights from, ball to Williamson, ball to Williamson, ball to Williamson. They're going to need to improve their outside shooting to keep the floor spaced, and that's an individual development situation for all of their young guys. But guys are Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram, are they ready to pop this year? 2 years in the league, they've been around, they've seen some things, they've gone through some injuries. They're looking to have a big year as well. So it's very exciting times down there in New Orleans.
Let me ask you this, though, about Brandon Ingram, who is viewed right now as the second star to Zion Williamson. What are your thoughts on his ceiling as a player? I mean, he came into the NBA as this kind of Kevin Durant facsimile. A lot of comparisons there, however unfair they may have been.
Yeah, they were.
What have you seen on him in the first couple of years?
Yeah, he's a heck of a good dude, first of all. He's a hard worker, and we just got to let him be his own guy and be his own player, because he's not going to be Kevin Durant, but he can be just, very effective player in the NBA. He's just got to find some consistency and get a rhythm. And Alvin is a tremendous offensive coach, and so he's going to find ways to make sure that those guys all get the ball, because Zion's going to need to hold it for a little while. Brandon Ingram needs to hold it a little while. Ball will get off it, and Drew Holiday will hold it. So they're going to have a little bit of an issue to figure out. Once they get that done, I think the synergy is going to be pretty good there.
Shout out to Darren Erman to teach them defense down there
in
New Orleans.
I think Ja Morant's about to get picked, but I just have a question for Coach Yeager real quick, because you brought up something that's interesting to me in terms of these young guys and how they need to develop their shot. You saw it firsthand. De'Aaron Fox, from his rookie year to his sophomore year, I think became a much more reliable outside shooter. Something that's interesting to me now is how many guys, not just in the lottery, but in the top 5, go, and it's like, well, they still kind of need a jump shot. When you're a coach, how realistic is it to expect those guys to make that improvement from the outside?
That's a great question, because as we get guys and we spend the time that we do with them, we always say, don't send me a player that you say, well, Dave, I know you can get him to play hard, or I know that you'll get his IQ higher. Those are two things that are very difficult to change, but we can through repetition and teaching and time spent with our guys. So you'll see a skill set, an athletic set that we can then work with a jump shot, and 2-3 years into it, they continue to get better. And Coach made a great point. Smart guys do get better faster because they figure it out and they know what is needed to get to the next level, and it'll be interesting.
All right, we're going to get back to the Pelicans and to Zion, because the Pelicans have more picks coming up in this draft, so we'll talk more about them as we move forward. But the second pick is in. It is Ja Morant, the point guard out of Murray State. He is now the replacement. I was going to say heir apparent, but he is now the replacement for Mike Conley in Memphis. John, I hear a lot of Russell Westbrook comparisons to Ja Morant. How would you?
Yeah, from an athletic perspective, he showed against Marquette and then against Florida State in the NCAA tournament that he has the chops to do that. I think the one thing you have to love about Ja Morant is this. He can have a great impact on a game as a point guard at the NBA level without demanding shots. He's very comfortable setting the table for his teammates while at the same time possessing the attributes from a physical and athletic standpoint to score and rebound at a high rate. And when you're thinking about somebody from Murray State being the second pick in the draft, you have to evaluate them against high major competition. In 4 games last year that Murray State played against high major opponents, Ja Morant's averages were 27, 8, and 8.
Coach?
The one beautiful thing about him, he's got no ego. Yeah. He doesn't need that ball to be happy. He's got no ego. When he was on that AAU team with Zion Williamson, he was the third guy that people spoke about, Zion being the second and Devontae Shuler being the first, who's a guard at Ole Miss, who's probably going to be an NBA guard in the future here. He never touched the ball, never complained. On the contrary, he was always as competitive as anyone on the court and did all the dirty plays to help that team win. And he's got no ego. He wants to win. He's a great team guy, freakishly athletic, but once again, great mind for the game. Hardworking kid that has an IQ, understands, and is a pass-first guy. I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty sure Dave will tell you, us coaches, we don't call timeouts to tell people to dribble more. We call timeouts to tell them to pass more. And when you get a guy that can pass it, it makes our jobs a little bit easier.
Yeah, no question. Dave, I want to talk about what Memphis' future, but you were a part of Memphis' past, specifically with Mike Conley. You coached him for several years in Memphis. He has now moved on, a member of the Utah Jazz. What was your reaction to seeing Conley traded to Utah this past week?
Well, I think, first of all, 9 years in Memphis, I know the fan base there is really, really excited about Ja Morant. That's going to be big time. Jaren Jackson Jr., and they can build out from there. Right? As far as Mike, all I've heard about is Mike Conley is the nicest guy. He's the nicest guy. That just goes without saying. He is unbelievable. The guy is a really good basketball player. He's really, really good. He's a winner, and he's a leader. And you put him with a couple of my other favorite guys in the NBA, Joe Ingles and Donovan Mitchell. They've got Gobert to cover up things at the rim there. Obviously, they tried to get it done at the trade deadline, couldn't get that done. I think this is a trade that works for both parties here. Sometimes it doesn't seem that it appears that way, but this Mike's excited. I know that he loves Memphis to death, but this is a new chapter for him and his career and his family.
Tell me what you saw from Mike Conley this past season, because statistically, he looked like he had a really strong bounce-back year off that injury-ravaged 17-18 season. But one thing I wondered coming off the injury was, would a quick guy like Mike Conley lose something off that type of injury? Did he look like the same player than he was pre-injury?
He still has that burst of, 0 to 5 feet. He can get there really quickly, and he shoots the basketball so well now. And remember, this is a guy who, coming out of college, was 18, 19% three-point shooter, and now what he's able to do is shoot in the 40s, and now he can spray the ball around. But his athleticism is still there.
Okay, Rowan, what do you think of what Memphis is doing now? They are in a full-scale rebuild now. They have two cornerstone players in Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr., their top 4 pick in last year's draft. What do you make of what they're doing under new boss Zach Kleiman?
I mean, I love it. I love Jaren Jackson as a prospect. I thought he was putting together like a rookie of the year type season last year. Obviously, injury issues and whatnot. I really like Jaren Jackson. I love when you can pair guys who just kind of make sense together on the court. You have your big and now you have your guard. And I think those two can play really well off of each other. So I really like that from Memphis. They're still in a little bit of a weird position in terms of they just still have a bunch of vets on their team. So it's going to be like a couple years before they can really get it going. But I really like it for Memphis. I just want to say one quick thing about Mike Conley, by the way, to Dave's point about just how good of a player he is. We all remember a couple years ago that Spurs-Grizzlies epic and Kawhi Leonard was having that great game winner to overtime. Mike Conley was kind of his foil on their side. He was the guy taking all the shots from Memphis. So I think that's a great trade for both sides. And I'm really excited for the Grizzlies. Jaren Jackson, I think, we're not talking about his future enough. Doncic, Trae Young, they kind of get the headlines. But Jaren Jackson and Ja Morant's two great building blocks.
Two guaranteed sellouts at the FedEx Forum next year. Marc Gasol's return to Memphis and Mike Conley's return to Memphis.
Absolutely.
Those 2 nights are going to be wild down in Memphis. All right, the third pick is in, and let's see how the New York Knicks screw this one up this time. The Knicks are taking R.J. Barrett, the kid out of Duke, small forward.
Okay.
Big scoring potential. A terrific prospect. I joke with the Knicks because they've had a rough go of it the last couple of decades in the NBA. But, John, start me off on R.J. Barrett. He's the third guy in this sort of 3-player top 3 in this draft. What do you make of him?
This is the positive. He had the DNA to want to be at Duke. He has the DNA to want to be in New York. He is embracing that responsibility. Maybe the least talked about first-team All-American I've ever covered because he played on the same team as Zion Williamson. 26, 8, and 5 in the 6 games that Zion did not play. Those were his averages. And he's somebody who is a high-level producer. He is a volume guy. He is somebody that's going to put a lot of shots up. I mean, if we're looking at it by comparison, last year, R.J. Barrett went through the whole season, did not have a game in single-digit shot attempts. Zion Williamson had 5. But a producer, if he's not going to be a franchise player for the Knicks, he will be somebody that can contribute at a high level statistically that they could use in a chip in a transaction down the line.
Frank?
He's been dealing with expectations for a long time. He's been that kid for the country of Canada, the next one. And obviously his dad and his bloodlines, he's been dealing with expectations and expected to perform, expected to get better, expected to lead. That's been part of his upbringing. And he went, of all the places you can go to, he went to Duke, where it's expected that you win. And now he's going to the Knicks, where that happens sometimes.
One big thing, too, in addition to having, obviously, the DNA and the mental stamina to play at Duke and to want to play in New York, his father played at St. John's.
Yes.
So he is going to be very well versed in what it's going to be like to play in New York, deal with New York. This isn't a guy you need to teach the subway system.
Yeah.
I think my guy Fizdale is going to love him. I think that's a good marriage there, and that fits.
And Dave, a big-time scorer like R.J. Barrett, I've found that sometimes guys benefit from the spacing of the NBA, more room to operate out there on the floor, more shooters. Is he the type of guy that would benefit from something like that?
Yeah, his shot's going to continue to get better. I agree with Coach. Coach Fizdale is going to enjoy having this young man, and I'm a Kevin Knox fan also. And so I think they've got length. They've got some ability to put the basketball on the floor and get in the paint, and they'll continue to add and develop their young guys as well. I think it's a good fit for all the reasons that you guys have said.
Rowan, what do you think of where the Knicks are right now? Because as we sit here, they draft R.J. Barrett. That was expected. But now they enter in kind of uncertain territory with free agency. They've targeted Kevin Durant. They've targeted Kyrie Irving. What do you think of where the Knicks stand?
I mean, we joke about the Knicks, but I do feel bad for them this summer. I mean, two terrible things went their way, right? They didn't win the lottery. Durant tears his Achilles. I think what the Knicks need to focus on right now, which they haven't focused on in a long time, just hit some singles and doubles. Don't hit some home runs. That's why I like RJ Barrett. I like a guy like Kevin Knox. Barrett might even be their best prospect right away. I am a big Knox fan too, but for the Knicks, I think your focus right now has to be just hit some singles and doubles. I mean, they have needs everywhere on the roster. They just need guys who can come in and, if not be superstars, be part of a core of a good team. If I'm them, I'm sure we'll get into this conversation throughout the draft. I still go hard after Durant. I still would make that move if he has interest in playing for our franchise, because a lot of the big guys haven't over the last few years. But if I'm the Knicks, my main focus right now is let's just, stop swinging big every time. Let's just get some guys in here who we know can be a part of a good team.
Yeah, look, I mean, now you have another young piece to add Kevin Knox to that puzzle. But, John, how do you think Kevin Knox, just assuming Durant's not in the mix next year, which regardless if he signs or not, he will not be on the floor. Kevin Knox, RJ Barrett, what do you think of that pairing?
Well, you're developing right now a pair of guys who are kind of in the NBA, which is combo forward. I mean, you have guys right now who are interchangeable, and they're both very young. I mean, Kevin Knox was very young for his age. RJ Barrett, again, played 1 year of college basketball. One thing, and Coach can speak to this, and so can Coach Yeager more than me, but delayed gratification doesn't exist anymore. People don't want to give anything time or seasoning. It just
what
doesn't.
What are you talking about?
It just doesn't exist anymore. And look, this is going back now a while, but I remember, doing an interview with Rick Pitino when, obviously he was at Louisville at the time, but talking about the mistake he made with Chauncey Billups. He drafted Chauncey Billups. He pulled the plug too early, a year or two into his career. He traded him. The guy became a Finals MVP and one of the best players in the NBA. I mean, patience and giving something the test of time needs to happen a little bit more.
One thing I'll say is this, and I think you saw it, we were talking earlier about the Lakers with Ingram and Ball. Dave, I know it happens in college. I can think 82 games is a little bit. I'm not very good adding and subtracting, but I think 82 is a lot more than 32. If your better players are rookies, their bodies are probably going to break down from the length and how hard every single matchup is, the length of the season, that is. So, having Knox and him, sometimes maybe you can rest one and play the other because they're so similar. But I worry about teams that put so much onus on their first-year players, right? Especially at such a young age, at 19 or whatever these kids are. Zion's an athletic freak physically, but everyone else is kind of normal. But I think the Knicks got a nucleus of young, athletic kind of guards, playmakers that they can be excited about.
Well, good for the Knicks. And boy, I feel bad for Knicks fans who are just so embattled over the years with those tough losses and tough directions.
But they got the third pick in a three-player draft. So
they
things
do.
are going their way somewhere.
But in the spirit of being mean here, our friends Priya Desai and Jessica Smetana went out on the streets of New York to lie to those Knicks fans. Let's check this out right after the Knicks actually picked.
We're at Madison Square Garden, home of crushed souls and broken dreams.
And we're trying to trick Knicks fans, or just NBA fans in general, into thinking that the Knicks traded up to draft Zion in the NBA draft.
Does this mean?
Oh, for sure.
We're here for it.
Let's do it.
Let's go. Well, did you hear what happened?
With Kevin Durant?
No.
This isn't about Kevin Durant. This is about the Knicks.
It can't always be about Kevin Durant.
Everything's always about Kevin Durant.
That's true. The Knicks traded up for the #1 overall draft pick.
All right, so they're going to take Zion Williamson?
Yeah, you know it.
Yeah, so we're going to the playoffs next year.
Finally. You're not surprised at all?
Did it really happen?
I think he doesn't believe us.
Well, do you want to hear at least what they got for him?
Yeah.
You know that song, Go New York, Go New York, Go?
Yeah.
They traded the rights to the Pelicans. It's now Go New Orleans, Go. Pretty good deal.
Not that great of a deal.
6 first-round picks for Zion.
I don't know if he's worth 6 first-round picks.
Really?
To be honest.
He's the future of the NBA. What about 4?
Maybe 4.
Okay, it was for 4, I lied.
What about 3 and James Dolan?
I mean, we can get rid of James Dolan any day.
So we have breaking news for you. The Knicks just traded up to the #1 pick in the draft to draft Zion.
This better not be an April Fool's joke.
not April.
Well, some kind of sick
We work
joke.
for Sports Illustrated. Do you think we
know.
make this kind of stuff up?
Hey, do you think that face is lie?
Absolutely not, but...
Okay, calm down. We don't have time for that right now.
Lily, what do you think?
Lily needs a cough drop.
Exactly. You got that right. This is big news. Finally, as a Knicks fan, you get a little bit of joy, a little bit of hope.
Yes. Eh.
He doesn't
we'll
believe
wait
us.
It out. We'll wait it out. Yeah, I don't... Yeah, sorry.
Wait, you don't believe me?
No. You got me.
I'm wearing a sports shirt.
He's ready. He was born
Knicks.
ready.
Yeah.
Are you a Knicks fan?
Are
Do
you?
you remember when the Knicks won last? Yes, I do.
We got some really great news for you, though.
What do you want? What? Tell me.
They traded for the #1 overall draft pick.
They got it? No, really?
Really?
You're joking. Who they traded with? So who? They traded with the
Pelicans.
Pelicans. They
Yeah.
gave up their #3 pick to get the #1 pick. Who else did they give up?
DeAndre Jordan.
I give that up in 2 minutes.
Yes!
Yes!
Are you so happy?
I'm so happy.
Jimmy-
Zion is coming to the Knicks.
So go tell every person you meet.
I will tell every person I read. Thank
Good
you.
sir.
Thank you.
Her name is Jessica Santana, if you want to follow up. I feel terrible. I do. That's hilarious. Anyway, we gotta go. Bye.
Never happens. I just love Knicks fans because
That
only
was so mean.
Only Knicks fans, though, going back to lottery night, can get like visibly upset about something that had an 86% chance of not happening. Like an 86% chance of not getting the first overall pick, and they got upset about it. I don't know. Now they got RJ Barrett, so we'll see what happens after that. Fourth pick is in. Formerly the Lakers, once belonged to the Pelicans. Now it belongs to the Atlanta Hawks. They draft DeAndre Hunter, the forward out of Virginia, averaged about 15 points per game with Virginia last year. Coach, let me ask you, how does he project at the NBA level? What kind of scorer offensively is he going to be?
He's a good player. He's got a high release point on his jump shot, which I think is big because some guys have a low release point and you have less time to get your shot off. He's athletic. He runs. He's underrated with his ball handling. He's not just a catch and shoot guy. He can actually make plays off the dribble. He can rebound it. He blocks shots. And I'm not – Tony Bennett and I play opposite styles. Like we coach different styles. If you project his numbers, and I'm kind of taking on John on this one, and he'll expand on it because he knows more about these analytics than me. But if you project his numbers, if Virginia would play at a higher pace, higher rate, more possessions, his numbers would be unbelievable. So I think he's going to translate extremely well.
Well, we're going to get to his teammate Ty Jerome later on in the first round. We'll talk about him. But think right now, if we took DeAndre Hunter off Virginia and we put him on North Carolina, what statistically he would look like with that ability to get out in transition, with the ability to finish. And the thing that he has really crafted is the three-point shot. Again, his freshman year only made 21. He made more than double of that his sophomore year. And I just love the fact that after struggling in the NCAA tournament, he was so good against Texas Tech, and he made the shot to send the game to overtime. 4 or 5 from deep in the NCAA title game.
Oh, we are, John, in kind of this sort of range where there are question marks around the guy. When you look at a guy like Hunter, where are the question marks?
The thing with DeAndre Hunter is this. I don't think that the ceiling is going to be as high with DeAndre Hunter as it would be with other people that you could have taken with this pick, but you have somebody right here who's the known commodity. It's like kind of like when you're going through an airport and you need the safe meal when you're transitioning to another flight. You want to go with the safe bet. You don't want any complications on your next flight. That's DeAndre Hunter.
Okay, that's an interesting analogy that you put out there. Rohan, what do you think of the mix the Hawks are putting together right now?
I like it a lot. I think we talked about this a little bit right before the draft started, but they got to build around Trae Young, right? And it's just about putting the right pieces around him. We've talked so much about DeAndre Hunter's three-point shot. I love when teams pick a guy who actually did shoot well in college. It's my biggest pet peeve. It's going to come up a million times tonight. There are just too many guys who get drafted now, and it's like, we really like him. He just needs a jump shot. And I'm like, this is the first thing I learned when I played basketball, was literally shooting the ball. What is going on here? Frank, maybe we need to talk about what these college coaches are doing. Teach these guys
we only get 20 hours a week in season, 2 hours in the off season.
Fair enough.
Hard to get better that way.
Fair enough. But yeah, I'm glad that I like high floor guys. I really like high floor guys in the draft. I'm trying to minimize the risk in these situations, and he just slots in so nicely. You know, they traded, I believe it was Torian Prince.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think he just slots in nicely there, and he's on the same timeline as everyone else.
Dave, is Trae Young the type of guy where you look at after 1 year and say, we need to build our team around his strengths?
I think that's what they're going to do. They're going to, keep putting shooters on the floor and keep it spaced, so he's got room to make decisions where he can spray the ball around the floor. And he sees the floor very well. He's not huge, but his shooting ability makes the floor even spaced even more. So I think it's always nice to have a guy who can step in as a rookie and is a 3-and-D guy, can make open shots and can guard at the other end. And then we can fill in the rest of the experience, just being able to be out on the floor and to get that experience in the practice and the game time. So I think it's very positive for what Atlanta's trying to do.
He plays the hardest position to pick up, I think, in the NBA, the point guard position, because you're effectively the quarterback on the floor offensively. And every night you've got to face somebody that's great on the other end as well. I mean, how tough is the learning curve? How big is the learning curve for a point guard in the NBA?
Oh, it's hard because also, you talked about having, like Memphis has a big and small combination. It took Mike Conley and Marc Gasol 3, 4, 5 years to perfect their own pick and roll game. And guess what? They're also in defensively 90% of the pick and rolls. So what do you do to a small point guard? You want to try to hit those guys. They're trying to hit De'Aaron. They're trying to hit Mike Conley. We always try to hit Trae Young. Take his legs away, and so his shot goes away, hopefully at the other end of the floor a little bit. So it does take some time and gain that experience of how to navigate defensively over screens and working within your system.
John, you jump in?
Well, I was just going to add to the DeAndre Hunter stuff. One college coach told me that his ability defensively to play different spots, it's going back 20 years right now, but remember how the Pacers used to have Derek McKee? In those playoff series, they would put him on different guys defensively. That was the comparison, which I thought was interesting, because even if he is on a team where he has other great offensive players around him, you can kind of pick different spots defensively to put him on the floor because he's that versatile.
Here, if I can add one thing on DeAndre Hunter, in today's day and age where these high school kids get so much national coverage, when there's a kid that doesn't get that same coverage in high school, everyone worries like, well, he's maybe not good enough. And all he does is win. And he wins against everyone else that's going to get drafted. So those are the guys he's going to be playing against for the next 10, 12 years. And I think he's a stud. I think he's going to be real good.
I mean, look at Fred VanVleet, a guy who won a lot in college.
Yeah, wasn't drafted.
Yeah, just unheralded guy. So I like these high floor guys. By the way, I think Dave and I should just do a show 1 week from now, just 1 hour on Mike Conley and Marc Gasol pick and roll. It's just a real beauty to watch. Yeah.
Real quick, so you mean to tell me it took those guys 3 to 4 years to figure out how to play together? Not 7 practices?
Yeah. 17 days of training camp?
Yeah.
Delayed gratification. So that's a new in term tonight, delayed gratification.
Can we go back to John bringing up Derek McKee in this show?
John's just bringing out a lot of analogies and metaphors and references. I'm impressed.
You got to get
really
them before
impressed.
they get you, Ro.
Yeah.
All right, the 5th overall pick is in. The Cavaliers shopped this for a while, but Darius Garland, the point guard out of Vanderbilt, is their selection. They have a point guard already in place in Colin Sexton. Garland, though, not a lot of tape on him after playing only 5 games in college basketball. What do we make of Darius Garland?
This was definitely a choice of assistant GM Mike Gansey, former player at West Virginia, who loves shot makers. I was at a Vanderbilt practice this year to watch Darius Garland. He is like a tool shed offensively because there's a little bit of everything in there. You've got the mid-range game, you've got the creativity at the rim, you've got the step back. I left that practice, and I didn't think that Darius Garland would beat Trae Young, but I said if there's somebody statistically at the lead guard position this year in college basketball that could do what Trae Young did and get 18 to 20 points and 8 to 10 assists from the point guard spot, it was Darius Garland. And he's an efficient player, too. In the games he played prior to injury, 58 from the field, 48 from 3. Coach?
I don't mean to keep beating a dead horse with the same thing, but I kind of know him a little bit. I tried to recruit him. Quality family, mom and dad, very involved. Not a kid that in today's day and age where guys transfer 9 times, 9 different AAU teams, they commit, decommit.
But they got to tweet out all those announcements.
Well, yeah, but
delete them.
A kid like him that was that good, stayed in the same place, never moved, and then went to his hometown school, Vanderbilt, where he was being recruited by all the big boys, and he turned everyone down to stay home. That character, there's a lot to be said with somebody with character, and he's got the talent to go with it.
Dave, I know we talked about how the NBA has become kind of interchangeable with players playing different positions, but this would be a really small backcourt that the Cavaliers would put on the floor with Colin Sexton and Darius Garland.
It could be, but it could be potent as well. C.J. McCollum, Damian Lillard have really got it going, and the two-headed, you try to play one side and pick and roll. You don't like it. You got the defense over here. You chuck it over to the other and go to work, and we've seen how effective that can be, especially when the ball's going in. So it seems like he can really put the basketball in the hole, and Colin Sexton's okay playing without the ball. I think that helps, and I think John has always been comfortable running a two-guard set, and I think that makes it it's very seamless for these two guys. They're going to figure out how to play together and continue to improve.
Let me ask you, though, what did Colin Sexton show you in the couple of games you played against him last year?
Man, we kept letting him shoot. Like, why are we still going under on this guy? He just got 3 threes. Oh, no, he'll run out of them. He'll run out of them in the second half, and he did make some shots, and we pulled away. But very impressive. He'll stick his nose in there, get after you. I think probably he and De'Aaron have played against each other for many years, and so they had a little rivalry there. But very competitive. I was very impressed, and he improved throughout the course of the year, which I really appreciate.
I think Darius Garland's got my favorite outfit of the night so far. If people have the ESPN feed on at their home, it's like the collarless shirt. It looks like he's wearing a robe. He really stepped it up out of the blue suit zone. I like that a lot. I do wonder, and maybe the coaches can speak to this a little bit, how does Colin Sexton feel about a pick like this? I mean, I think they would play together, and I think you're right. John Beilein obviously comfortable playing, two guards together at the same time. But if you're a young point guard and you feel like, hey, I got to put my stamp on this team. I have to be the guy who, gets us into our sets. How do you think he feels about, the next year they turn around and take another point guard?
I can tell you, I was there. We had Kyle Lowry, Memphis Grizzlies, played 1 year. Next year, we got Mark Iavaroni gets the job. We're drafting 4th. We take Mike Conley. And you know what? Kyle Lowry was there the next day to meet him getting off the plane. They're still very, very good friends. But back then, it was 1 point guard game only. You know what I mean? And I think the game has changed significantly now. These guys know each other. They've been playing together on the circuit. I think it can work.
All right, the Minnesota Timberwolves are on the clock at number 6. They got that pick from the Phoenix Suns. Before we get to that Timberwolves pick, here you see the trade 2019 pick with the Minnesota Timberwolves swapping spots. We caught up with a bunch of the biggest names in this year's draft to conduct our own pre-draft interview. Here is the first part of that.
I think I was going into my freshman year, playing in a blue-collar gym, and I got a steal, won a fast break, a little two-hand, a little rim grazer.
I started first trying to dunk when I was my 8th grade summer. I couldn't, obviously, but as you get older, you get more athletic. So my 9th grade year, I think I was in pickup, and I just tried to dunk it one time, and I dunked it.
Yeah, first time I dunked was, I forgot where it was, but it was 8th grade summer going into 9th grade, and I got a fast break. I came from the left, and it was a rim grazer, but I felt like I was high. I was pretty high at the time.
My 11th grade summer, was going into my senior year during that year.
Okay. Did it surprise you, or did you plan it? Were you building up for it?
I was building up for it. I just wanted to dunk.
The first time I dunked, I think I was at practice, and I was practicing with some older guys, and they were all dunking. They were like, "Man, you can't dunk." So I'm like, "Okay." So I went up there and just dunked it, and then everybody just kind of went crazy a little bit.
It's funny. There was actually a camera crew there that day, and I could never dunk. I just could never get it. Then I got a steal in a game, and I don't know. I just kind of went for it, and I made it.
I remember being outside with my dad, playing on my little basketball court with the little black backboard. I can remember that like it was yesterday.
Just playing. My dad was a coach. Just playing, my dad was a coach in the Little League. So just, that was my first memory.
My first memory, I remember watching Allen Iverson on TV. But my first memory playing was, I remember it's this recreation center called Longcrest. I was in the inside gym. I made a shot, and I looked at my family, and they looked pissed. But I was playing terrible, but I made one shot, and I was hyped.
I think my first basketball memory was probably playing church league.
Okay.
There's a little league back home, and winning the championship.
My first basketball memory is I was about 5 years old, and we got our first basketball goal for Christmas, me and my brothers, and we stayed out there all night playing.
Used to wear like wristbands, as like the same color wristbands as the person on the other team. So just playing in those leagues growing up was definitely fun.
I remember my dad used to play in France, so I was in France playing in the little Euro basketball leagues. And I just remember running up and down, just having a great time.
I don't even know.
It's been a long time.
It's been a while.
Probably when I was like 9, 10.
Let him tell it. It's probably the last time we played, but my dad is no, like when we play, he only plays me when he feel like he has the advantage. So
see, I've never beat him before because we haven't played in like 4 years, and he won't play me again. So yeah.
So he quit while he was ahead.
Yeah, he quit.
Smart man right there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, back here on set, and the number 6 overall pick is in the Minnesota Timberwolves, technically the Phoenix Suns, but going to the Minnesota Timberwolves. They select Jarrett Culver, the shooting guard out of Texas Tech. John, this was someone that was projected potentially to go to high as number 4. He falls to number 6. What kind of player are the Timberwolves getting?
You know, an all-around player, Chris, somebody who can defend, somebody who can be really versatile, but also somebody who is much improved as a facilitator. You know, Chris Beard told me earlier this season when Texas Tech was getting ready to play Duke that the biggest area that Jarrett Culver improved from his freshman to sophomore year, his ability to facilitate. 67 assists as a freshman, 142 as a sophomore, also can rebound. Somebody, again, who still has to probably refine his shooting a little bit, but can have a great impact on the game by not scoring.
Frank?
One thing I can tell you, Chris Beard's a dear friend, and they run a motion game. So he is used to moving, screen, and cut and doing things other than just stand around or just hold the ball. So he doesn't have to hold the basketball, but yet he made that drastic improvement in his ball handling and his assists, which is in a motion offense to improve that much. That's tremendous.
Dave, specific to the system, Ryan Saunders took over that team early in the season, so you only have a finite amount of time to kind of put your own imprint on the team. Going up against them and watching them play, what kind of system do you think Ryan is going to go with next season?
Well, he's got an MVP candidate in Karl Anthony Towns. It's a contract year for Jeff Teague. And Wiggins is, I think, set to break out and go to places where, you know, people say this or they say that. I think he's ready to take the next step. I think he's tired of hearing you're not getting this, you're not getting enough of that. And I think Ryan and he are going to have a great relationship. He's put together a good staff, and I think it's very, very positive. With the Culver kid, I think all these guys that come out have been the best player on their college team, their high school team, their AAU team. But what I like about this young man is that he can play a complementary role. And I think that's a very underserved quality to have for guys coming in and being the new guys and just learn how to play off of other guys. And if he does that, he's going to get more and more time. He's very heady. He improved each of his years there, and I think it's a good pick for Minnesota.
What's your read on Ryan Saunders' potential as a head coach? I'm sure there were a lot of people, you know, maybe not in Minnesota, but nationally, looked at the name Saunders and thought maybe that's why they hired him as a head coach. What's your read on him?
Yeah, good friend of mine. Have a lot of respect for him. You know, he's probably had to turn jobs down around the league because he's so well thought of as an assistant coach while waiting to get the head job here in Minnesota. So I think very highly of him, and I know it's not easy to be Flip Saunders' son when you have that, you know, how great we all think that Flip was, and as much of a mentor and a friend to me. So it can't be easy. He's kept his head up high. He's got a brand new baby, and things are moving forward for him.
Yeah, Miami and Philadelphia are interested in Ryan Saunders for assistant coaching jobs, so he is well regarded across the league. Rowan, what do you think of what the Timberwolves now are building with their new front office, and now Ryan Saunders, the permanent head coach?
Well, not to insult any of the coaches who are here with us today, I'm sure they would be great at running teams. Frank's doing a great job running his program. I think it's good that they have a little more, you know, traditional structure there right now with an actual general manager and a head coach in place. I think Coach Jaeger said some very nice things about Andrew Wiggins. I respect your opinion, sir. I'm just going to disagree with you on this one. Someone sent a tweet the other night that was like Andrew Wiggins was great in his prime, and it was a YouTube of his high school highlights, you know, a mixtape of his high school highlights.
That was his prime.
Yeah, that was his prime. It's just, listen, I like the Culver pick, and you guys hit on something that I think is important. Drafting guys who can be in complementary roles. You know, I was talking to Romeo Langford the other day for a piece for SI, and I asked him, you know, what kind of guy would you like to be your first year in the NBA? And he said something that I thought was intelligent. He said, a lot of guys would love to be the leading scorer, but that's not realistic your first year. And I think that's why it's good to have someone like Jarrett Culver. But you guys mentioned he's comfortable playing off the ball. He's going to have to be really comfortable when Andrew Wiggins taking all those mid-range jump shots. So, I'm glad. I think Minnesota, Coach Yeager, I'm sorry, man. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to blow you up.
I'm a positive guy.
I like that. Maybe you're going to be coaching Andrew Wiggins one day. I get it. I don't want to put you in a bad spot. I'm just saying, Minnesota, they got a long way to go. I really like Towns. You mentioned, the Wiggins breakout thing. Here was something that bothered me a little bit. Obviously, Jimmy Butler threw a huge wrench into their plans last year. I really thought both their guys were going to make huge jumps once Butler left, just because, this is really your team now. It's back on your timeline. You remember a couple years ago when they beat the Warriors, the 73-win Warriors, and it was like that. It was that kind of win that made us excited about Minnesota. They just didn't really have that last year after Butler left, and that really surprised me. And I think that just kind of was a little bit of a red flag for me. I do think it'll help to have a guy like Ryan Saunders there, now have a whole season with these guys, and not have to kind of deal with the midseason coaching switch too. But I like Culver. I just still think there are a lot of questions about how the Wolves are going to build.
All right, the Bulls have settled on their pick at number 7. It is going to be Coby White. The Bulls get a point guard to add to that mix out of North Carolina. Great size on this kid. A lot of skill with this kid. John, what's your read on Coby White?
A lot of three-point shooting, too. 82 made threes last year, and this has been something that, people have looked at for Chicago as a necessity to add a quality point guard. You're adding that in Coby White, somebody who took the baton as a freshman at North Carolina, was able to lead this team to a Sweet 16, and was also able to always go over the top of the defense. One thing about Coby White that you have to love, he can set the table, but he can also be an alpha and be in a situation, because he's such a good shooter, where he can move off the ball, play with another point guard in a dual point guard look, and make enough shots to keep the defense honest.
Coach?
I love Coby White. I loved him in high school. It's competitive. I can't stand point guards that are not competitive. They drive me crazy. They're the head of the snake. They're the ones that get the thing going on offense and defense. And he is as competitive can be. Once again, loyalty, committed to North Carolina as a sophomore. And, who does that in today's day and age and keeps his commitment? And just a quality kid. Competitive, and think about it. The weakness in his game is his shooting, and he made 82 threes. So
35 from 3, 35%.
Yeah, that's his weakness, and that's something. He's 18 years old. Think about this.
Delayed gratification.
Think about this. Your question earlier. You no longer have to worry about only having 2 hours a day to practice basketball. Now you can practice it the whole day, and there's no violations for going in the gym and shooting.
Rowan, you should never have brought up.
Every time Coach Frank says, in today's day and age, I feel personally attacked because I feel like I do all the things he's talking about. I am just the human embodiment of everything you dislike about today's day and age.
If someone practices what they're good at 2 hours a week, how good can they be?
True.
It's a great point. No, it's a great point. I really like what the Bulls are kind of building here with this core, by the way. I mean, Markkanen didn't play a ton last year, which I think took away from some of the strides he was making his rookie year. But I think Carter was a really good pick for them. They got a nice little core right here. It's weird to me how much they're paying Levine and Otto Porter, considering kind of the timeline these other guys are on. But that projects to be a fun little starting five.
It is, and one thing that the Bulls front office has done pretty well is that they've drafted well over the years. Markkanen was a terrific pick. And now, Dave, they seems like they've got a nice young core to kind of try to take steps forward with.
Well, I think it's going to be pretty competitive. With Zach, Chris Dunn, he's no slouch. He's trying to get his game to pop and take off to that next level as well. So you put somebody in there as competitive as this young man is, as talented as he is. They're a little bit similar. All three of those guys are going to need the ball, and that guy Markkanen, he should get it once in a while too. But I think both Minnesota. You talk about Minnesota with Ryan and what Jim's going to be doing there in Chicago. When teams go through those transitions throughout the course of the year, the team meetings, we've got to look ourselves in the mirror, and then 2 games later the coach gets fired, and then we got to have more team meetings, and that stuff does wear you out. And I think for Jim and for Ryan both to have a full training camp, albeit it's only 17 days as we go forward. But how about over the summer? Guys coming in, spending time together. They're going to get together, and I think that's very positive.
real quick, want to say, anyone watching at home right now who's seen Frank Martin on the sidelines during a college basketball game and you're like, this man is really intimidating, it is way worse in person, especially after you've made him angry. So just, if you're watching it, yes, this man is as intimidating.
Bro, and this guy's a teddy bear, man. Come on.
Whew, I'm sweating. I'm sweating
Avoid
so
eye
much right now. Yeah.
You're on the other side of the table.
This man is a great coach. Do not disrespect him.
All right, before we get back to the draft, our own Madeline Burke caught up with Ja Morant at the Panini event. Madeline, what did you and Ja talk about?
Well, of course, it was at a Panini event, so we talked a little bit about trading cards, but we also just talked about him as a player. I mean, obviously, incredible talent. He has looked, his no-look passes make him look like the Patrick Mahomes of the NBA. But also, he is really triggered by negativity. He said, that's an interesting story that I said. He said his dad kind of encourages him with that negative speak. So check out the interview.
All right, now we want to get to know a little bit more about you two. Ja Morant out of Murray State. First of all, a lot's been made about the fact that you and Zion Williamson, the projected top 2 picks in the NBA draft in 2019. You also played AAU basketball together back in the day. When you guys were playing together, did you have any sense that this would be your future, where you guys would end up?
I obviously felt like both of us was good enough to play in the NBA. Zion is a great talent, a rare talent, and going 1 and 2, I never thought of it, but I know he was capable of being those type of players.
He's become such a flamboyant personality, but he's also said that when you guys played together, he was super shy. How do you describe him?
He was shy. We used to try to joke with him sometimes to see if we can get him to laugh or anything. But he was a shy dude, really just stayed around his mom, but he'll be like he don't even talk, and then go on the court and score 30. So it was crazy.
Just all business right there, all business. Were you a shy guy?
Nah, I'm not shy, but I'm a laid-back type of dude.
Okay.
Chill.
All right, yeah, you keep it mellow.
Once I get to know you, I'll probably laugh and joke some, but other than that, I just be in the background, in the shadow.
Yeah, you got that mellow Southern vibe going on. I get it. Now, I love this story. Your dad, you've told this, your dad had a chance to play professional basketball and actually turned that down when he found out your mom was pregnant with you. Is that right?
Yeah.
What's the story there?
Like you said, he turned down the opportunity to play professionally to stay and raise me. And now it's like I'm living my dream and his dream through me right now. So we both achieving a dream.
How much was he a key part in you developing your game growing up? What kind of advice did he give you? How did he coach you growing up?
He was a big part. It wasn't no good advice he gave me, I'll tell you that. It was good, but it was negative. He never told me anything positive about my game. He'll call me overrated or you're not doing enough, but it only made me hungry, and it prepared me for fans. This past season, playing in away gyms, you hear overrated chants. It doesn't bother me because he called me that before, and he was my hater before I had something.
Do you thrive off of that? Are you somebody who thrives more off of criticism than you would off of praise?
Yeah, I'd rather hear the negative parts than positive.
Okay.
Negative energy really motivates me to go harder, so them doing that is like poking a bear.
So when you hear positive energy then, if you hear people saying how great you are, does that make you a little more complacent?
Nah, I'm never satisfied. Obviously, I like to hear good sometimes because you never know what a person's going through.
Yeah.
And just to hear something positive about you, obviously it'll make you feel good, but I'm never complacent at all. I'm gonna just continue to work, but if you had to ask what would I rather hear, just tell me the negatives I did.
All right, I'm here for it. Well, speaking of positive things, your basketball IQ is ridiculous. And the way you see the court and the way you see the game, I'm just so curious. I mean, does it kind of happen in slow motion for you, or how do you describe the way you see it, the game unfold?
Obviously, my IQ, I feel like is the biggest part of my game, being able to see plays before they happen. So that just allows me to slow the game down. It's, like you said, it looked like I'm playing in slow motion, but it just makes the game easier for me and my teammates. I'm able to make plays for me and them.
Obviously, we are here at the NBA Players Association at an event for Panini. When you get drafted, you hear what team you're going to Thursday night. You're also going to get your first trading card. Are you excited to see what that looks like on a trading card?
I'm very excited. Obviously, being a kid growing up, you have favorite players, and you will want their trading card or their autograph or their jersey. And, just for me to be able to work with Panini now and obviously have the chance to have a trading card, and it's just an honor, honestly, and I can't wait to see mine.
Do you remember whose cards you had growing up, or memorable cards?
I had a LeBron card one time, Kobe. It's a lot of people. I actually had stacked them up, but
now you're gonna have a John Morant card.
Have one, so
you'll be dishing them out to the kids out there too.
Yeah.
As somebody who, personally, I'm tall, but I can't get off the ground. My vertical is like weak. But you soar. What does it feel like to be that high in the air? Like, what does it feel like to have that kind of vertical?
It's crazy. Obviously, when I told you I was just trying to dunk for the first time, and now I'm pretty sure y'all see like clearing somebody.
Right?
It's different. Obviously, when I do the dunk, ain't no telling what. I just like black out. And so if I cheer or something, I don't know what I'm doing for real.
When you're like running down on the court in the break and you see that you've got this wide open lane that you can dunk it, are you choreographing in your mind what you're gonna do, or are you just winging it?
Obviously, if I see the lane open up and it's like where I can take off from, I'm gonna take off. And the only thing on my mind after that is go finish the play.
Finishing the play. All right. 2019 draft coming up Thursday night. John Morant, good luck, congratulations, and we look forward to seeing a lot more from you in the future.
Thank you.
Great times chatting with John Morant. Now, of course, the draft is continuing, and the number 8 pick is in. New Orleans via Atlanta has selected Jackson Hayes, a center out of Texas. And Jake, he went from being a bench player in high school to averaging 10 and 5 in his lone season at Texas. What is New Orleans getting out of him?
This is the 3rd straight year a Texas center has gone in the first round. We saw Miles Turner, and we saw Jared Allen, well, actually the 4th, Mo Bamba, and now we have this big guy, Jackson Hayes, who, incredible length. I actually saw him for the first time in person yesterday at the media availability, and you guys can tell, I mean, this kid, full body, he's gonna ripple out muscle. This guy is gonna become a prototypical modern NBA center, especially with Lonzo Ball in that backcourt. He is going to be a true rim threat on both sides of the floor. He's going to be able to block shots, 3.8 blocks per 40 minutes in college. And a lot of his finishes in the Big 12 play were lob threats out of the pick and roll set. He is going to be an absolute stud there. What's interesting is the Pelicans were talking trade for this pick up until the last second. I just found out from a team source that they were talking a deal with Charlotte. But at this case, I mean, Hayes, this was his range the whole time. He worked out only for the Bulls at number 7. He worked out for the Hawks at number 10. Clearly the Hawks, sacrificed an opportunity to get him here at 8, being that they traded up to get DeAndre Hunter at 4. But with Hayes on the table at 8, I mean, the Pelicans now have potentially one of the most athletic front courts with Zion Williamson. They're going to be up and down with both Zion and Hayes filling out the lane. Lonzo and Drew Holiday can also both take the ball off the rim and run out in transition. It's going to be a really fun team to watch.
Young, fun, athletic team. And I love the athleticism in Hayes' family, too. His mom was a college hooper. His dad actually was a tight end for the Chiefs, Jonathan Hayes. So a lot of athleticism in the blood. Excited to see how he translates to the pro level as well. We want to send it back to Chris and the guys over there. We want to hear your thoughts on this pick as well.
Yeah, before we get to the next pick, I do want to ask you guys, now we have a front court of Zion Williamson and Jackson Hayes in New Orleans. How do you think that front court pairing works out?
Well, obviously there's rim protection for Zion Williamson, but I also think in today's day and age, we shouldn't limit Zion Williamson as a power forward in the NBA, because you can play super small and play him almost like a point center if you really want to get funky and mix up your lineups. But Jackson Hayes, to me, is an unbelievable story, because you have somebody who averaged 1 point per game as a high school junior, hit a massive growth spurt, protects the front of the rim. I think there needs to be a little more gunpowder in his diet at times. Toughness and conditioning has been a little bit of a question mark, but obviously a high ceiling pick right there at 8.
Gunpowder in the diet.
I love it.
I do. I want to just.
That's how you stay on Frank's good side.
I like
just
that. I like
notes,
that.
right?
I was
Make
trying
him laugh.
Piggyback off something John said. It is interesting to me. I mean, Dave was bagging to me, while Madeline and Jake were talking. He called New Orleans taking a big, And it's a good call. I am curious, though, because I do see Zion long-term, just the way the game is headed. If not starting at center, I don't think that's going to happen. You kind of want to close with him at center at least, or close small. Obviously, we'll see what happens. There's a lot to play out. You know, we just saw Marc Gasol play in the finals, so it's not like centers are dead. But that is an interesting, I think, long-term play there to take a big right now.
All right, the Pelicans used their second first-round pick on another big. Washington, they have made their selection. Rui Hachimura, the forward out of Gonzaga. Frank, what can you tell us about Rui Hachimura?
Multi-talented. I think his best basketball continues to be in front of him. Once again, you go back, somebody that's gotten better every single year in college, and I think that'll continue. I'm not going to pretend to be a Wizards expert, but my assistant coach is the biggest Wizards fan of all time.
Bruce.
I'm tired of hearing Bruce tell me we need front court players. We need front court players. So I'm a big fan of Rui's. Once again, red shirt, took his time, not the microwave society you're talking about. And he's going into, I'm a big believer, big guys that go into teams that have experienced guards, it's easier for them. And they've got experienced guards, and hopefully they can put it all together.
Dave, I'm curious, how valuable is it to a team when you have a guy that improves every single year, that is a little bit more of a body of work around him than your typical 18, 19-year-old with only a season?
Yeah, he definitely has some depth of experience. Comes from a great culture and a great background. And all I've heard about him is that his best is still in front of him. So with how things are playing out there in Washington, in the front office and how that comes down, I know Scott will spend a lot of time with this young man. Bradley Beal is healthy and ready to go. He's a good dude, ready to go. But I know with John's injuries and what direction they're going as a franchise, those things need to be stable. Putting stable people into those organizations like Rui is positive for the Wizards.
Yeah, John, I think Scott Brooks is one of the best developmental coaches in the NBA, earned that distinction from his years in Oklahoma City. What kind of player is he getting to work with?
He's getting a player, as Coach Martin said, whose best basketball is in front of him. And here's another thing you have to remember. When you have somebody like Rui Hachimura, who looks the part of an NBA combo forward, he's playing at a high major program that's in a mid-major league. So I've talked to plenty of West Coast Conference assistants to really game plan for Gonzaga with Hachimura on the other side, who were stunting, coming up with junk defense, coming up with a lot of zone. If you give this guy more space and more opportunities to be in open areas to facilitate, he is going to get higher percentage looks. He's a high percentage offensive player already. One thing you like about Rui Hachimura, very adept off the bounce with his pull-up game. Needs to add the long distance a little bit, but NBA people, like Coach Yeager, I'm sure will say, that is the one skill that can really, with reps, start to take shape at the next level.
First of all, I believe Hachimura is the first Japanese player drafted in NBA history, which is pretty cool. I have a question, again, for Coach Yeager. Now, this is my opinion. I don't want to put any words in Dave Yeager's mouth. You were just recently working for a front office that some of us as writers take a lot of just joy in watching them operate sometimes. A little bit unclear, the flow chart in Sacramento. I don't know, who's pointing at who. Shaq is somehow involved. You got mixed up in that. But here's my question. Because right now we're seeing the Wizards in a similar position. They don't have a general manager. They're going to hire one after free agency or something. It's just a little bit of a mess in Washington right now. And I'm just curious, how do you, as a coach, you're looking at that situation, what do you think about a guy who's not going to be the long-term GM making a decision this important?
Well, I think you got to grab guys by the shoulders and let's bring this thing in here and let's circle it up. Let's do this thing together. I don't know who's going to be here long term or who's not outside of this circle, but let's keep these guys close. Let's get them in there. Let's get touching them, spend time together. Let them spend some time together as players, and let's get ready for summer league and then carry some momentum into the fall. I think that's what you do, because you can't. We talked about it off air. You can't let these guys get away from you. You got to stay in touch with them. You got to have open and constant communication with them. And I think that that's going to be on Scott right now. Take that leadership position until the GM gets named.
Do you have any idea, Chris, who might end up here?
Look, as longer this thing drags out, the more likely Tommy Shepard is to keep that job as the assistant GM operating there. So we'll see what happens. But for more on Hachimura, Jake, Madeline, you have a little bit more insight into the new Wizards rookie.
Absolutely. And as Rohan mentioned, he's the first Japanese-born player to be selected in the first round of the NBA draft. Only the second Japanese-born player to ever play in the NBA once he makes his debut. But he's also a really sweet guy. I talked to him a little bit on the red carpet before the draft tonight over at Barclays. really endearing, great kid. He, as we mentioned earlier as well, he learned English as he was getting to Gonzaga. Not only was he learning a new playbook, learning the game in the American college level, but he was also learning a new language. I asked him what words he started with, and he goes, honestly, probably all the curse words, and then I went from there. But Jake, as a player too, he's bringing a lot to this Washington team. What is your assessment?
To me, what all comes down to is how well his shot will transition out to the three-point line. John kind of mentioned it in the other studio, how, you know, a lot of mid-major defenses were really keying in on him, but now in space, like the Wizards have a giant hole in the wing with Otto Porter being moved. And his three-point mechanics, I think, will eventually evolve out there. He only shot 36 from deep this year at Gonzaga. But I think the real thing that this pick will really do is solidify to them defensively on the perimeter or on the interior, because they already had Bradley Beal, who is a lockdown defender, in addition to all he can create offensively. Now you have Hachimura, who can probably switch between 3 through 5 and really shore up that Wizards interior presence. The interesting thing with Rui is that the intel all throughout the draft process was that he had a promise somewhere in this range. He pulled out of the combine. I asked him about it yesterday at the media availability. I said, why'd you pull out? He smiled and said, I don't know. So that's clearly all you need to know to kind of showcase that he had a promise. And the fact that we now know it was to Washington, it clears the way for the Hawks to take their guy in Cam Reddish here at 10.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, Rui, very physical player, great shooting touch, but he is also older than most draft selections. He's 21 years old, and a lot of players say, hey, when you come in your rookie year, you're judged against fellow rookies. But after that, you're judged against people at your age because of the way your body takes age as well as the game going on.
One thing about his age is that you have to look at him. We talked about him being a Japanese player. There have been two things that have kind of stalled his development a bit. The language barrier has been a factor. And as his language continues to improve, he's going to be able to learn, you know, stunts and dribble hand, like that advanced terminology that not only him, but all college players haven't learned some different types of NBA terminology that I'm sure Dave Yeager can talk about defensively. But plus, you have to look at him developmentally, kind of more like someone the average person would be as a sophomore in high school. He came to the game late. So while he is 21, he's only really been playing, you know, really actively and competitively for about 6-7 years. So he does have a lot of room left before he hits his ceiling.
Now with the 10th pick, Atlanta has made the selection. Cam Reddish, forward from Duke, is headed to the ATL. What are your guys' thoughts on this one?
Well, Cam Reddish now going to Duke with that 10th overall pick. The Hawks were able to hold on to that 10th pick, and they're wheeling and dealing with the Pelicans at the top of the draft. Coach, they get another solid wing player to add to their roster. The third member of that Duke trio now gone in the draft.
Obviously, everyone's always talked about Cam's talent and his ability to shoot. I think one thing that's important, and Dave said this earlier, Atlanta has made the decision that it's Trae Young's team and that they're going to build around Trae. Well, obviously, he just experienced going to Duke and having to play a secondary role. So at least you know you got a guy that's not going to get his feelings hurt the first day when he finds out that he's not going to be the focal point of the team. So, you know, his length, his athleticism, his ability to shoot, you know, Atlanta's got a core of guys there that are extremely talented offensively.
Fourth highest ceiling in the 2019 NBA draft, Cam Reddish. The fourth highest ceiling. Now, again, if we have to talk about the other side too, because there's a lot of people who think he's the Tin Man. He has no heart. He has no fight. We've heard all the stories about the seesaw that is Cam Reddish. Now, I had a conversation with a Western Conference executive 2 weeks ago, and he told me that the same attributes, the same questions that are currently surrounding Cam Reddish are the same things that surrounded Paul George when he came into the league out of Fresno State. Here's what you like about Cam Reddish, though. Was hiding in plain sight at Duke last year, still made 89 threes. And I always wondered this question. If he was not on Duke and he was at a place where he was featured on a regular basis, what would we be talking about with Cam Reddish? So there's high risk, but the reward is simple. The fourth highest ceiling in the NBA draft this year.
Coach, what do you think about what Atlanta's building right now? They got Trae Young at the point guard. They picked DeAndre Hunter with that 4th overall pick. Now they add a wing, solid wing in Cam Reddish.
Yeah, they're adding versatility, an ability to you know, play multiple positions and play different ways and keep the floor spaced. And I agree. If this young man hits right here, somebody's going to look awful good. And there's a lot of talented guys in the NBA, and there's separation between the guys who just get it done because they got the grit, they got the character to take that talent and maximize it. And can Cam do that in this situation here in Atlanta, or how long does it take for him to find that spot? To be determined.
What did you think of the new slogan for the Hawks season tickets?
No.
The Atlanta Hawks, where defense is optional.
Oh, there we go. All right.
Yeah, let's go back to Derek McKee
yeah,
right there. What did
John, stick to the metaphor.
Let me ask Dave. Let me ask, what do you think of the job that Lloyd Pierce did last year coaching that team? Because when Lloyd came in, I don't think a lot of people knew who he was and were wondering if he had staying power in Atlanta.
Yeah, no, Lloyd and I work together as assistant coaches in Memphis, and I've got a great deal of respect for him and the job that he does. He has a very nice way, and I don't say nice as in soft, but of talking to players, communicating with players, getting them to understand. And it comes from a, I want you to be as good as you can be mindset. And a young team, that's what you want. If you're a GM, that's what you want in your coach, to continue to develop players and get them to believe in that, the more time they spend in the gym, listen to the way that the coach wants to get it done instead of all the other voices that are out there. That's positive for the program.
They need to bring Vince Carter back.
Well, I was
just to have Vince compared to these three guys.
I mean, I will say, in terms of bringing Vince back, you joke about it, but something that I love about what the Hawks are doing, it's a little bit of a remixed version of the process, in my opinion. So if you remember the process Sixers, Brett Brown, obviously they were trotting out these kind of insane teams, but Brett Brown still made sure they played a very specific style of basketball. It's high possession, fast-paced game. He didn't really care about who was on the court. I really like that's what Lloyd Pierce did last year. He said, we might not be very good. We're going to win some games. We're going to lose, but we're going to play a very specific style of basketball. I'm already thinking of, as John would say, defense optional, how I'm going to use this Hawks team on NBA 2K next year. I'm trotting out John Collins, Reddish, Hunter, Herter, and Trae Young all together. At some point, we're going to see that lineup. Again, we don't know how good it's going to be. Probably not defend anybody, but it'll be a lot of fun. I think Lloyd Pierce is a really good coach for that group because he's going to have them playing, I think, a style that suits them very well.
Yeah, I like what Lloyd did, especially when it came to Trae Young, kind of just building him slowly over the course of that full year.
And they're keeping veterans there to just kind of make sure that, hey, no one's.
You know what I've learned? Those pieces fit a little easier together on NBA 2K than it does on the court.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong, Coach.
You're really pushing a boulder up a hill.
I have so much respect for Frank Martin. I just totally blew it tonight.
All right, the 11th pick in the draft is in. It's going to go to the Phoenix Suns eventually, and it is Cam Johnson, the forward out of North Carolina. Frank, the second North Carolina player comes off the board.
I sat in his living room, and I thought I had a chance, given that his family's from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, when he was leaving Pitt. And North Carolina called shortly after, and away we went. But his length, his ability to shoot, I think he's an underrated defender. I really think he can defend, and he's a kind of 1-2 dribble jump shooter. So it brings a different dynamic where it's not just a catch and shoot kind of guy. But once again, high-level shooter with size. It's so now you put guys on rotation and that guy's running at him. He's bigger. It's harder to get to him because of his size.
So the North Carolina guy who was a grad transfer with 2 years to play from Pittsburgh, who was in college for 5 years, was taken ahead of the one-and-done guy who had the seasoning. I mean, think about that for a second right now. Nasir Little a year ago, if he went to the NBA right out of high school, would have been a top 10 pick without hesitation. And now a guy who was an afterthought on a Pittsburgh team for a number of years, he was their 4th or 5th best player, stays in school, gets the seasoning, and he goes 11 because he has a skill that will translate instantly. He was hiding Chris last year, again, in plain sight on North Carolina, alongside Little, alongside Kobe White. 96 made threes last year and shot better than 45% from deep. And one thing about Cam Johnson is this: you can play him as somebody who's going to run off screens and make shots, but also, and I don't want to cross the streams and get into the NBA realm here, but guys who are ball-dominant players in the NBA, whether it's LeBron, Kobe, Jordan, you need shooters around them as an ancillary piece to stretch the floor. Cam Johnson fits that to a T.
Well, you also need guys who can pass them the ball, which Phoenix still lacks. I think Cam Johnson could be a perfectly fine player. I don't know what it is with Phoenix and small forwards, though. Last year, they really loaded up. They had T.J. Warren. They drafted Bridges. They signed Trevor Ariza. They shipped off Warren, but now they're taking another small forward.
Josh Jackson's there.
Josh Jackson's still there. They got a lot of forwards. They don't have anyone to get these guys the ball, to set them up. It's interesting to me because Kobe White was there for the taking for that. And again, who really knows how this stuff's going to pan out? Someone's going to come back to this clip years from now when Cam Johnson is like, curing cancer and is the greatest basketball player in the world, and talk about how I blew it talking about him. I just don't know why they just refuse to get a point guard in Phoenix.
Well, I think Terry Rozier might be an option for them in Phoenix as they hit free agency. He's someone they've been interested in.
Star Celtics point
guard. They saw Paul Pressey plays a point forward a lot, so they're trying to find that point forward.
All right, for a little
He's
bit.
older than Devin Booker, by the way. Cam Johnson. I'm just being told that. How about that?
All right, let's check in with Jake in the other room for a little bit more on Cam Johnson out of North Carolina. Guys.
Oh, yeah. Hey, well, fun fact about him, actually. His middle name is Jordan, and he went to Carolina. Slight little thing there. But, yeah, obviously one of the best, if not the best, shooters in the 2019 NBA draft class. Obviously, you guys mentioned he shot 45% from three this season. A great asset, a very selfless passer. Jake, what's your insight?
There's just one more note here that makes this pick so interesting. It's that Cam Johnson's hips got red flagged medically by a couple of teams fully out of the first round. So to jump down all the way from 11 when the Suns, they fired their entire front office this season, mainly because the Suns were unable to deliver a starting point guard alongside Devin Booker before last season. Now they had a chance at Kobe White at number 6. They traded down to 11 to take Cam Johnson, who, by all means, he could be healthy, but the hips are something that a lot of teams were scared of. And the reason why this is particularly interesting is because the Suns had this vaunted training staff for decades. They're the head of that. Aaron Nelson is now in New Orleans with David Griffin. So this is a very unexpected selection.
Yeah, Aaron Nelson was key to keeping Steve Nash afloat for all those years with his back, and then we saw what happened when he went to the Lakers, and that was definitely much more of an issue. So if that training staff, as you mentioned, goes down a level or two, then who knows how these hips. Yeah. And really, the hips don't lie, guys. So back to you guys.
Wow, okay. We're going Shakira lines now here on the show. That's all right. Dave, before we move on from Phoenix, we saw them trade T.J. Warren earlier in the day. We know they've been shopping Josh Jackson. What do you make of the Suns' decision to shop a guy that just a few years ago was the 4th overall pick?
At some point, you got to pick. I think you made a great point with they have a high number of guys that are similar in their skill between 6'5" and 6'8", and so at some point you got to pick. And you know what? I believe they traded a first-round pick to get Michael Bridges last year. So you got to marry it at some point. Make your pick and go forward. And maybe you're right exactly that they know that they are certain in getting a point guard of veteran nature rather than Kobe White or some of those guys. So it'll be interesting to see how it comes out.
What's Josh Jackson shown you in a short time in the league?
I'm a big fan. Well, is he a great shooter? Is he a great passer? Is he a great dribble? The guy gets up and he competes every night. He's hard-nosed. He'll guard you. He will drive it. He will run. He will offensive rebound. He will be physical. And I think you win games like that over the long haul. 82 games, you have that guy in your roster. I think he helps you win games.
All right, the Charlotte Hornets are on the clock right now, and they have made their selection. P.J. Washington, power forward out of Kentucky. The first Wildcat, Frank, off the board going to the Charlotte Hornets.
Got a lot better from his freshman to sophomore year. Made a tremendous adjustment to college basketball. Understood what he needed to work at to get better. Took tremendous strides. Big-time kid, big-time character. Know his dad, Paul, well. I haven't sat down and watched the draft from beginning like we are today in a while. A lot of high-character guys. And I've been fortunate. I've recruited some of these guys. High-character kids, man. They're family people, and that goes such a long way, especially when you got to be in a locker room with them 100 times a year. It's you got to have guys that can coexist with people, and PJ's big time that way.
Yeah, kind of like a Carl Landry type, that undersized, power forward that can play either spot but also get stuff.
You are
done.
digging deep
have
into
you watched
this
the
is
NBA
great.
in the last 10 years?
Derek McKee and Carl Landry. I love it.
I'm digging
Carl
deep
Landry.
for Maddox right here. But to echo on what Frank said, this is somebody who, when he was a freshman, was on a Sweet 16 team at Kentucky, and his inability at the free throw line cost Kentucky the game, and he worked diligently to refine his offensive game. 5 made threes as a freshman, 33 as a sophomore, completely changed his body and committed nutrition-wise, too. And I think he, in a lot of ways, personifies this NBA draft because we knew you were going to have 3 guys at the top, and beyond that, there are other people who can plug a hole on a good NBA team. He's one of those guys. He's got some Carl Landry in him.
Dave, Charlotte, what they're trying to build down there, obviously they've got a big decision to make this summer when it comes to Kemba Walker and his upcoming free agency. But what do you think about where the Hornets are as a franchise right now?
Well, I think they've solidified a direction under Mitch Kupchak. James Brago's doing a good job there. I think they're happy together, and I think that serves you well long term. The players have stability. They know that the GM and the head coach are on the same page, and they can go and do their job going forward. I like what they're doing at the wing here. They've got some athleticism already at the wing. You still have Batum on the roster. Has tons of knowledge, and in the East, it's a wide open playoff race, and to have the opportunity. And again, you got to see what happens as the Kemba Walker thing plays itself out.
Yeah, Roland, this could be a tough call for the Hornets because Kemba Walker is kind of an institution down there in Charlotte, and has said publicly many times that he wants to stay in Charlotte. But he's also someone eligible for the Supermax and is going to draw a lot of interest from many teams in free agency.
I do not envy the Hornets. As much as I love to play NBA general manager, this is not a team that I would feel comfortable taking over because you mentioned Kemba. I mean, if you bring him back, then you're almost committing to, well, we got to get back in the playoffs. We're paying someone a lot of money. We have a franchise cornerstone here. At the same time, they're picking in the lottery every year. They're stuck in the bad no man's land team, right? I mean, they used to talk about teams like the Grizzlies of the mid, decade, the Raptors, back in the day. This team is a second-round ceiling. What are they going to do? The Hawks back in the day. The Hornets are even in a worse position than that because they're paying a lot of guys a lot of money, and they're not even making the playoffs consistently. So I think they're in a really tricky spot. I don't know what's going to happen with Kemba. I made an absurd fake trade that I suggested for them today that involves them acquiring Chris Paul and Clint Capella. It's just not even worth. I was so deep into the trade machine, my eyes were bleeding. It's not really worth getting into it. But they are in a weird spot. They're going to have to commit. Do we go for a youth movement? Do we play Malik Monk huge minutes? I really like Miles Bridges. I think they have some good pieces there. They just have so many veterans. Also, I don't know how they juggle that moving forward.
Dave, how nervous would you be to commit maybe $200 million to Kemba Walker and tie up your payroll with a player that I believe right around 30 years old?
Man, I do coaching, so here's how I look at it. There's some dudes in this league that you do not want to be in a tie ball game with in the last 90 seconds. And I'll tell you, he's one of them. Mm-hmm. He just gets it done. He makes tough shots. You can blitz the pick and roll. You can change the coverage. You can, and the guy, he gets away from you. He'll split it. And it just seems like he made big shot after big shot against us whether I was in Memphis or Sacramento. So I don't know if you can put a price tag on winning close games.
Oh, you've removed yourself from consideration for a coach GM job in the future.
Thank you. It's okay with me.
All right, we caught up with a bunch of the biggest names in this year's draft to conduct our own pre-draft interview. Here is the second part of that.
My go-to pregame snack, can it be a drink?
I'll get like one of those Gatorade bars. I eat those or a banana or something.
I like to drink a Body Armor.
Really?
Yeah, Body Armor before.
Is this like a millennial thing? You guys don't like Gatorade? Like, what's going on?
Nah, it's nothing like that. Gatorade's tough. Gatorade tastes good, but I don't know, Body Armor, it just tastes, I did it when I was in high school. I tried it when I was in high school, and I started playing good, but don't get me wrong, Gatorade's super tough too.
My favorite pregame snack is a banana. I don't play without eating a banana before the game.
Probably some fruit snacks. Try to keep it simple.
Fruit snacks.
I like the ones, they're like fruit smileys, I think they're called.
Okay.
They got smiley faces on them.
But I want to say Allen Iverson. I really do, but I'm not 100% sure.
LeBron, Cleveland jersey.
It might have been an Andre Iguodala jersey when he was on the Sixers.
I mean, I used to watch LeBron a lot. Obviously, I feel like he's the GOAT of our generation. And I got gifted a jersey by LeBron.
The first basketball jersey I owned. I ain't never owned one. I ain't never owned one.
You never had a basketball jersey growing up?
Nah.
So the first basketball jersey you had was your UNC one?
Yeah.
I think it was a Kobe Bryant jersey. I was a huge Kobe fan growing up. Me and him had the same birthday, so I had his jersey when I was real young. I had all his shoes and everything.
My dad's. I own my dad's jersey first.
Michael Jordan jersey was the first jersey and really only jersey that I've ever gotten.
Spider-Man.
Why Spider-Man?
I mean, that's all I watched when I was growing up. Cool dude. I just thought he was real smooth. I liked him.
The Hulk, for sure.
The Hulk, really? How come?
just because he a beast, bro. He get it done.
See, I can't pick a favorite one because I like the whole Avengers crew.
Okay.
The whole Avengers crew, I love them. So.
What do you think of Endgame?
Oh, I watched it 3 times.
Really?
Yeah, I take 3 hours out of my day to go watch that any day.
Favorite superhero? The Incredible Hulk.
Really?
Just love his movies. I feel like he's unstoppable, so definitely like that.
There's a tie between the Hulk and the Black Panther.
The Black Panther is Superman.
The Hulk just cool. Like, he get mad and he get huge. Like, I wish I could do that. So I watched the Titanic like 2 days ago. I ain't cried, but I got a little teary-eyed.
Was that your first time seeing the Titanic?
No, the Titanic's my favorite movie. Yeah, I see it all the time.
I don't really cry during movies. Nah, movies don't necessarily get me emotional like that.
Marley and Me. That's a movie when I was younger. You've seen it.
I've never cried in a movie before.
Never cried in a movie?
No.
What?
The movies are fake, so.
The last movie that made me cry, no movie has ever made me cry.
Not one? You just don't get emotional?
I mean, yeah, but it's a movie. It's not real.
All right, the 13th pick is in, and the Miami Heat have got their hero, Tyler Hero, guard out of Kentucky. Of course, the book on him, he's got elite perimeter shooting. He's a good defensive effort. His body type and his lack of athleticism can hurt him a little bit. But Jake, what's your instant reaction here? What do the Heat get?
I'm going to disagree a bit about the lack of athleticism.
Yeah?
He is a sneaky good athlete, which is typically a thing.
A lot of people
shooters.
will say that he looks like he's not as athletic, but then it's because he makes it look so easy sometimes.
For sure. The one thing that really came about with Hero this season is that he came in as a shooter from Wisconsin and became a pole of that Kentucky offense. With all that attention starting to come to him on the three-point line, he was able to showcase some creative ability off the bounce, attacking closeouts. And the thing here that's really interesting, him going 13 to Miami, the Heat were 1 pick ahead of Boston at 14, and the word all around the league this week was that Boston was really keying in on hoping Hero would be there at 14 to close out the lottery. So Miami jumped up ahead. Or they didn't jump up; they were always there, but they stole a guy that I know the Celtics were definitely targeting.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this unfolds following this pick as well, but we'll send it back to you guys to get your reaction as well in this selection.
Frank, what do you think about Tyler Hero going 13 to Miami?
I love it. I'm a huge fan. You know, I was listening about athleticism and all that. I know a lot of guys that have unbelievable athleticism and no motor. So you never see the athleticism when the game starts. You see it in one-on-0 drills. I don't know what his athleticism is in a one-on-0 drill. His athleticism when it's winning and losing is real good. He never stops. He's running.
Yes.
He shoots it on the move. He shoots it off the dribble. It's a 1-2 dribble pop shot. He's got size. And this is one of John Calipari's better defensive teams in a long time. And he did it with 3 freshmen on the perimeter, Tyler Hero being one of them. I'm a big fan of Tyler Hero.
All right, John, we are getting into that kind of area where, I mean, there's a lot more misses than hits at times.
Yeah.
What are some of the question marks around Tyler Hero?
Well, one of the biggest things I think when you look at Tyler Hero that you're wondering about is his consistency, again, to be able to get his offense going against NBA caliber defenders. That is the biggest thing that I know that NBA people were concerned about. Now, I do want to say one thing you need to be, sure of with Tyler Hero is there is much more to his game offensively than just his ability to make shots. Chris, watching this guy in practice in terms of his ability to pivot, to shot fake, which is a lost art, and an unbelievable post-entry passer. He has fundamentals that go really, really well beyond just his ability to shoot the basketball. But can he be in a situation where he's going up against NBA caliber defensive wings and be able to get his offense going? To me, that's $1 million question.
All right.
Well, as you guys know, I'm the resident Heat fan on this set. I didn't really know what to make of this pick until I found out that the Celtics were looking after him.
Capital J journalism there,
And
by the way.
just, yes, of course. Listen, anytime the Heat, they have a good history of taking guys that the Celtics wanted. You know what happened with Justice Winslow. So now I'm a huge fan of this pick. Anytime we get to screw with the Celtics a little bit more, I'm here for it. So I like that. Listen, Spo's going to coach this guy up. Who hasn't Spo turned into a contributor?
It's high level objectivity here.
Right? Come on. You got Rodney McGreer. I don't have the airport analogy for this guy. Here's what I'll say. The Heat do need shooters, I think, and I think he kind of fits that bill. I think they're just looking for a guy that they can develop on the wing and just give him some more three-point shooting.
Dave, kind of take me inside what you do as a coach when you look at a guy like Tyler Hero and his body type. And, you got to develop that kind of man strength to be able to defend at a high level at your position. What do you do as a coaching staff with your strength and conditioning guys to build a guy up so they're able to physically handle the NBA?
Well, that's one of the strengths of the Miami Heat organization in general. They will ride you. You will be in shape. You will be in the best shape of your life, and through the coaching staff and the strength and conditioning staff, all tied together. They take a great deal of pride of being one of the best conditioned teams in the NBA. That's why we really enjoyed running them down this year in Sacramento, getting up and down the floor 100 miles an hour.
Don't get me started.
But Spo does a great job. They did the Ellington. They lost Ellington in a trade, and Magruder and some others. So there is some vacancies there. For some minutes to pick up and see if he can compete for those.
They're in an interesting spot, too, because they have to, if they're going to keep going down this path of just trying to claw out wins every single season, which I respect completely, no tanking in Miami. They've got to hit on picks like Tyler Hero. These guys have to turn to
They did hit on Bam. I think he went 13.
Bam Adebayo, terrific pick. You're right.
And they've got some older wings that are close to their contracts expiring. So now you got a younger wing that can maybe work for a year, two, and then eventually become that guy.
Miami senior. Just love the hometown Heat, baby.
Why not, man?
That's it, man. I love it.
All right, the Boston Celtics, they didn't have any luck making a deal up until this point. They are drafting at number 14th, and they are going to select Romeo Langford, the shooting guard out of Indiana. John, big exhale there from you. Your thoughts on Romeo Langford?
Wow. I mean, I was convinced there were times this year that he signed a no-compete clause on the defensive end of the floor.
Ooh.
I mean, I understand offensively that, he had some issues, with, some injuries and so on and so forth. But if you're a shooting guard, even if you look the part physically, you got to shoot better than 27% from three. You got to have a better assist-to-turnover ratio of 75 to 68. And most importantly, this is the thing that I noticed. He never, to me, on a consistent basis, looked like he was more interested in helping Indiana win versus he was as enhancing his own brand and his own stock. So I am shocked. I'm flabbergasted. I'm speechless that he went 14 overall.
And you're worried about me being mad?
Here's what I'll say. To John's point, I'm not going to, John's watched a lot more Romeo Langford tape than I have. Here's something that, just in his defense, there were obviously questions, hey, why didn't this guy play at the end of the season? Was he really here for the team? To me, one positive sign, I think a lot of his teammates spoke out in defense of him. I mean, Juwan Morgan said, hey, he was one of the best teammates I had. That's something, those are his teammates, but the guys who played with him weren't burying him that badly. So that, to me, is one positive sign.
But I can tell you this. Yeah. There were people on Indiana's staff that wished that he was buried and that the team got into a fight so they would show a little bit more prowess than they did at times defensively. If you are a good enough player to be picked in the late lottery, your team's got to be better than 19 and 16 if you're a guard. I know obviously you can split the atom and say, well, Jackson Hayes' team played in the NIT. Lead guards in college basketball dictate everything. And if you're that good and you come with that pedigree, you've got to set the tone. Even if you're not statistically performing at a high level, you have to set the tone from a defensive perspective. And he looked like a lot of times, more often than not, he was disinterested on that side of the floor.
So is he like the tuna sandwich at an airport? Like what's the airport food comp?
I just said I was speechless with the pick. I'm more speechless now.
Frank, would you like to offer the other side? I mean, what is the upside of a Romeo Langford?
His talent and his youth. It's everyone talks about like they're so young and how good can they become. He's got a lot of time to get good. I mean, he's a very talented player.
Yeah.
It's there's a lot of things that go into it. I'm on that side of the sport where the one and done sometimes doesn't help us, because there's some guys that are more consumed and better prepared to be there than they are in college, and it just he might be one of those guys, and it's hard. I just said this in my press conference yesterday. We can't sit around and judge 18-year-olds, because if we did, none of us would be sitting here right now, because none of us were very intelligent or very good at 18. And but I get what he's saying. I understand, and I'll say this: Archie Miller's teams are guard-oriented, and very, very aggressive defensively. And to hear, he watched Indiana a lot more than me. To hear what he's saying would be a concern for me.
He's the all-airport shooting guard. He looks like an NBA shooting guard physically. He's 6'6". He's got great potential to be a great two-way player. But another thing, too, and, you know, to follow up on what Coach Yeager was saying about Kemba Walker, you know, if you're constantly coming up short in close games and you have that type of a talent, to me that's an alarming concern when the head hits the pillow.
Well, Chris, I'm curious, because you're as plugged in with the Celtics as anyone. Is there even room for him on the wing here? I mean, they got Brown, they have Tatum, they have Smart. Rozier's almost certainly coming back. I think it's no secret that they would probably have liked to have packaged these picks for a player at some point. Where does he even fit in?
Oh, look, they still might, and I'm not sure where he fits in on this team right now because they're pretty well set at the wing positions with Hayward coming back, Brown, Tatum. That's three guys. They could play small ball with Tatum at the 4, which I think is in his future as he gets a little bit older, a little bit stronger with some really small lineups. But I don't know. I know they didn't want all 3 of these picks in this first round. As we speak, it looks like they're going to have them. But, Coach, you mentioned Terry Rozier. I want to ask you, you know, it looks like a foregone conclusion that Kyrie Irving is going to be elsewhere. Terry Rozier had a terrific end of the season last year, a great playoff run, struggled in kind of a dual role this year, splitting time at both guard spots, backing up Kyrie Irving. Do you look at Terry Rozier and see a starting caliber NBA point guard?
Yeah, I do. I think he's a starter. He put 34 on us last year, and I think when you grow in anything, and then there's an expectation of taking the next step. And I think the next step for his opportunity was to be a starter. Then Kyrie played most of the year. He didn't play as much, didn't have the consistency of minutes, and I think that expectation missed with where he was with his game and what he thought he was going to be able to do. So I think there's some disappointment from his angle this year, and I think you're going to see a very much improved player going forward. I think he's going to find a new situation here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I think that's one of the bigger questions Boston faced this offseason. Can Terry Rozier be kind of rehabilitated back into that player we saw at the end of the season? All right, the 15th overall pick, that has been decided. The Detroit Pistons sitting there at 15. They are selecting Sekou Doumbouya. If I got that right. Small forward from France. John, your thoughts on Sekou?
Well, you know, one of the younger players in the draft, looks the part, obviously, from an athleticism standpoint. Somebody that, again, is that versatile, multi-skilled, multi-position type player with a high ceiling. Now, he's raw. He needs seasoning. He needs reps, so to speak. But this is another, when you look at the foreigner situation, this was the guy that a lot of NBA scouts had #1 consistently in terms of foreigners in the 2019 NBA draft.
Yeah, I mean, first international player off the board, and he goes to Detroit. And Dave, the Pistons played one of the more, they are more one of the traditional teams with their bigs. They go Andre Drummond and Blake Griffin. You don't see a ton of that anymore as teams start to downsize. In a general sense, do you think that style of play and those two guys in particular can be effective together on a winning team?
I think they can be because of their extreme athleticism. And I know we're not having the 22-year-old version of Blake Griffin anymore either. But when you get to the ability where you have to get to a switch, Blake can keep guys in front of him, and Andre can as well. At times as well, it was different when we had Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph. They're going to call those guys up there in the pick and roll and hope that those guys will switch and then rack it as much as they can. So they're athletic enough to do it at one end enough to really hurt you at the other end because Andre's averaging 5 offensive rebounds a game. They got to keep the basketball moving. They got to stay healthy. I love Dwayne Casey there. I think Ed Stefanski is just a big stud muffin running that thing. I like what they've seen, like what they've been doing already. They've been active, they've been aggressive, and they haven't made a big mistake. I think that's solid for Detroit.
Can we cut him saying stud muffin so I can text it to Ed right now and send it over to Ed Stefanski?
Detroit was playing really well down the stretch of last season. Then Blake Griffin got hurt. They were making the Drummond-Griffin pairing work, and Griffin especially, I think the way he's embraced his outside shot has made that work a lot better. This to me is, last year they took Luke Kennard. They needed shooting. This to me is kind of like Stanley Johnson didn't pan out, so we kind of need that wing type. So it makes sense to me in terms of you take a guy like him because can you coach him up like we talked about? You take a guy he has talent. We think we can get him the shot through repetition. That's what this kind of move is.
Now, let me ask you, Dave, about Stanley Johnson, because it does seem like, I don't know if they give up on Stanley Johnson, but this might be someone that may supplant him in their kind of hierarchy there down the line. When you're going up against Stanley Johnson, what was your scouting reports on?
Dave's not giving up on anyone. He's about to tell me Stanley Johnson was
I will tell you that I thought there was a point in the league where Stanley Johnson and Justice Winslow were the new it.
Right,
at the 2-3.
Certainly.
because if you put a dude who is too light in the rear end on either one of those two dudes, they're just going to go, and they'll just truck you back into the lane. So I think Stanley's got to play with the basketball in his hands. He's got to obviously get his shot has to improve. And you kick yourself, well, gosh, how long is it going to take? I love his smile. I love the way he competes. He deserves to be in the NBA as a rotation player. I think he's got to make himself a point guard. I think Justice playing with the basketball as much as he has. Those big, strong guys like that, I mean, they just bounce off you, and you can't grab them anymore the way that the rules are. So I'm hoping those guys can take another step in their games.
All right, halfway through the draft, and now that we know the lottery picks, where do this year's draftees fit into the annals of NBA history? Our friends at SI Now took a look at the best players drafted at each position in the lottery. Check it out.
Winning the lottery doesn't necessarily mean you win the draft. Michael Oluwakandi, anyone? Could have been Dirk or Pierce. Greg Oden? KD went next. Anthony Bennett ring a bell? Giannis went 15th that year. So while we may remember some of the worst, who was actually the best selection at each spot? We went through NBA history and made our choice for the top pick ever at every slot in the lottery to create the ultimate NBA draft. Let's start appropriately enough at number 1. Wild depth here. You can't go wrong with any of these names. We'll go with the guy now in the endless GOAT debate. He's the king for a reason, LeBron James. At number 2, you've got the logo, and he isn't even the choice. You could also make the case for Kevin Durant as the best overall player from this group, but giving the proper hat tip to history, Bill Russell holds down the spot. And with the 3rd pick, he made the earth sick. Sorry, Sam Bowie. His airness Michael Jordan is the easy choice here, even in a crowded field. The talent falls off a bit at 4, especially if you ask James Harden, but you can still get CP3 with the 4th, where the point god, flaws and all, is the best of a group featuring Russ, Bosh, and Dave Cowens. The 5th pick is probably the toughest on the board. Call it recency bias if you want, but we'll go with Dwayne Wade, who won as the man and as part of a super team. At number 6, it's Larry Bird. Let's just move on. There are actually Hall of Famers to be had at 7, but none of the others revolutionized the game like Steph Curry. He's the clear choice here. As for number 8, Willis Reed has the moment, walking through the tunnel. And hey, leading the Knicks to an actual championship has to count more than being a role player on a Celtics dynasty. At number 9, Dirk Nowitzki broke the stigma around international players in the draft, and as a result, the sweet-shooting German separates himself from his all-star contemporaries. Rounding out the top 10, we're not ***ing you, it's Paul Pierce. And that's just the truth, with apologies to another Paul. 11 is tough. Reggie Miller is the bigger name, but Klay Thompson has more all-around game. We'll take our second Splash Brother. As for number 12, Julius Erving is just what the doctor ordered. It's hard to believe the mailman is not the choice at number 13, but we have to go with a teammate he probably liked less than John Stockton, Kobe Bean Bryant. Mamba mentality indeed. Finally, finishing the lottery at 14, Tim Hardaway's crossover is not enough to keep Clyde Drexler from gliding into this spot. So to sum up, if your team didn't land Zion, that doesn't mean all hope is lost come draft night.
4 first-round picks.
You're doing good, man.
All right, coming out, we'll look at the 16th overall pick in the draft. The Celtics, though, Rohan, 2 more selections in the first round. Not exactly what Boston wanted.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we were just, chatting about Boston while that tape was running. What's kind of the plan here now? And something I really wanted to get the coach's kind of opinion on was, there was a report this week from Jack McMullen who basically said an issue that the guys had there was how Brad Stevens handled working Gordon Hayward back into the rotation. Now, obviously, Hayward making a lot of money, an important piece for that. I'm just curious, have you guys been in a similar position? And if so, how do you kind of handle, we need to get this veteran going, we need to get this older guy going, but not at the expense of everyone else?
Yeah, and just for context there, from what the word I heard out of Boston about Gordon Hayward was that some of the players felt he was being babied by Brad Stevens. And I guess to a degree I understand it because you've got a guy coming off one of the more catastrophic injuries we've seen in the NBA last season. At the same time, Dave, you have 2 guys in Brown and Tatum and Rozier to an extent that just went through an entire postseason where they starred and played big minutes. How tough is that to kind of navigate for a head coach?
It's a delicate line to walk, and obviously it's an easy target to hit too, because they coached and played together in college. But look, there are directors of sports performance now on every single team. They're not going to miss. They have too many people that are on top of this. There's minutes restrictions. There's load management of how many minutes a guy can play over the course of a week, how many miles he has run, how many hits he's taken. This is not done in a vacuum, and it takes a whole team. And they have a great team up there in Boston, and I think they handled it for what is best for him long term, and that's also what's best for the organization long term. And if there's grumblings, it is what it is.
Well, I mean, Frank, especially in college, there's so many, like, some guys are going to stay here for 4 years, some guys are looking at the NBA. There's a lot of competing interests. How do you just manage all that?
Well, the key word you're using is some. There's always some in the locker room that don't like what I do. There's always some in the locker room that don't like what Dave does. So is that some 8 guys? You got a problem. If that sum is 2 guys, you don't have a problem, because those 2 guys have a problem with every decision you make, not just the way you handled Gordon Hayward. And I think it's petty. When they're professionals, they know when they sign Gordon Hayward that there is a bond there between Brad and Gordon Hayward. Anyone that saw the injury that guy went through, anyone that knew the player he was before he got hurt, it's going to be patience. And who's going to be more patient than anyone than his guy with him? And then on top of that, the one thing that coaches still get blamed for, and I'm telling you, we got nothing to do with anymore, is anything to do with medical. We're not allowed to keep these guys on the floor. We're told when and when not to. The word some, to me, as a guy in the locker room, that's the word that has to be defined before I give any kind of credibility to that report.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about, Coach. Dave had 100% buy-in on every single team.
Well, you were in an interesting position because you had a guy that you coached in Memphis, and Zach Randolph, who maybe didn't necessarily fit in on the timeline that you guys were in Sacramento. And I'm sure you had to have a conversation with him about how you guys were going to handle him last season. I mean, how did you approach that with him?
Straight up as much as possible and just communicate. Zach, here's what I need you to do. You're a very proud player, and you've had a terrific career, and I hope you continue to play. But at this point, we got to go in a direction where I got to play these guys. It was a developmental year. We're supposed to win 23, 24 wins, get our young guys as many minutes as possible, and I feel like we did that. And him playing 32 minutes a game, if we would have won a couple more games, to the detriment of developing the players, the younger guys. But I think, Coach, what you're talking about is I think you're going to see this, the chippiness that goes on happens more on younger teams than it does on older teams, because it's a maturity issue when you look at things through a different lens. And hopefully that's all it was.
Does Zach Randolph still have a flip phone, by the way? There's like an infamous meme of him using a flip phone before a game. I'm just curious. Do you know if he still has a flip phone, or is he up?
And I don't know anything about stuff like that either. We don't do medical or cell phones.
Okay, all right, good to know. Hey, Twitter was going to want to know, so I'm glad I asked.
I think someday I think there should just be one statue of Zach, Mark, and Mike in Memphis, just like all 3 together.
NTA.
Right, NTA, of course. Yep. The grit and grind guys, all in Memphis, all in one group. All right, let's move on to number 16th pick. The Orlando Magic, who have off-season issues of their own. Nikola Vucevic, an unrestricted free agent. They are selecting Chuma Okeke, forward out of Auburn. SEC guy, Frank, what do you know?
Extremely talented. Can shoot it, can rebound it, athletic. My only concern is that he had moments that he would disappear. And a player that's so talented, I know Bruce Pearl's challenge was he never wanted him to disappear from a game because he's got too much talent. But Bruce loved him, and I understand why. When that kid hurt his knee, it could have been a devastating moment for their team. But once again, a high-character kid, extremely talented, and he'll make a full recovery from that knee injury.
John?
He's a little bit of Robert Horry. He's a little bit of Tobias Harris. He is the epitome of a combination forward. And when Auburn beat North Carolina in the Sweet 16, with all the North Carolina guys we've seen tonight already get drafted, that was the best player on the floor. Had 20 and 11 before tearing his ACL. And because of the ACL injury, he's somebody who I think has a chance to be a great value pick down the road because he was off the radar a little bit. I mean, in Auburn's Elite Eight win against Kentucky, in the near win over Virginia in the Final Four, this guy didn't play. So he was really starting to hit his stride against North Carolina, but again, he is aligned with that in position in the NBA, the combo forward.
All right, for more on Chuma Okeke, let's check in with Jake, who's got a little bit more on Orlando's newest draft pick.
The thing with Chuma is just that he was not considered a first-round pick at all entering into this year, And throughout that SEC conference play, he just rose immediately up our board at SI. I think we were pretty early on having him in the first-round area. And just from talking to teams just now, this is considered a reach by some, but a very appropriate reach, being that he's going to miss most of this year recovering from that injury. But a lot of teams have been saying that this is a guy that people would have thought about taking in the top 10 if he was healthy. So to get that availability and that high upside at 16 is a really good value. And I'd be curious, Chris, if you want to ask the room, especially Coach and John, who saw him at the college level, if they really thought that he had top 10 potential too.
Did you guys, Jake just asked, did you guys think from a pure talent perspective that Chuma had top 10 talent on him?
I wouldn't say top 10. I thought that if he was able to play throughout the NCAA tournament, he would have played his way into the top 15 or 20. He does look the part of an NBA prospect, and he does have the ability now to extend defenses, which is the biggest thing that he showed. Bruce Pearl told me when he was comparing Tobias Harris to Chuma Okeke, there are a lot of similarities, there are some minor differences, but that when they were recruiting Chuma Okeke was the pitch. Hey, Tobias Harris was this for us at Tennessee. Come to Auburn, do the same thing at the same position.
Dave, let me ask you, because Orlando really turned the corner last year under Steve Clifford, made a run into the playoffs, a really strong performance after a disappointing year before. Nikola Vucevic, though, is a free agent at the end of the year. How critical is Vucevic to what Orlando does as a team?
Well, I think maybe they got a little ahead of themselves for where they wanted to be. Like if they wanted to go a little slower, they kind of set expectations a little bit too high. I think they'd like to have another year of Mo Bamba getting better. And our guy out of Florida State, one of my favorite players. Jonathan Isaac is just so long. And this is why sometimes it just takes time. Aaron Gordon, it seemed like, oh my gosh, he got a whole bunch of money. Guess what? When that contract, towards the end of that contract, they're going to say, oh my gosh, I can't believe we got away with only paying him that. He's going to outplay his contract. And it just, now he's in his 5th year, and it does take time. Things came together for them this year, but Vucevic, if he's not back there, will open up a lot of minutes. And this will be a little bit more of maybe a step back and develop those young guys. Maybe almost all of them out there together. You don't like that when they're rookies and sophomores, but now they're getting into their 3rd year, and I think they can take that.
Yeah, Orlando, I almost think they have to let Vucevic walk. They, for a long time and still a little bit, have too many front court players. I don't know how you get Bamba, Isaac, Gordon, all minutes, especially if you bring Vucevic back. And now you're adding another kind of power forward-ish type guy in the mix here. I love the Aaron Gordon contract. I've never loved his fit in Orlando. I don't know that they've ever unleashed him the proper way. He never sees minutes at like center, for example. I mean, just try like a small ball lineup, something there. And now Vucevic, I mean, you got to let him walk. Otherwise, what are you doing with Bamba and Isaac? We did kind of see them play together a bit last year, but they just have a lot of guys who I think are intriguing prospects on their own, but you can't necessarily play them together at the same time. You can't play Bamba, Isaac, and Gordon together. Now you add Okeke into the mix. I mean, I think he's a great value pick for them, to John's point. Like, you pick a talent like that up, they just have a lot of sorting out to do. But Steve Clifford did an awesome job there. I was surprised the Hornets ever let go of him. He built that defense and did a lot of great things there. I like his fit in Orlando, but he's got a tough job sorting out the front court.
All right, the 17th pick is in. The Brooklyn Nets officially making the pick, but this pick is earmarked for the New Orleans Pelicans. And they select Nickeil Alexander-Walker, the cousin of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, out with the LA Clippers, shooting guard out of Virginia Tech. Right up the road from you there, Frank, in Virginia.
Be careful. This kid can play. Be careful. Buzz Williams, one of my closest friends. I know what Buzz is about, what he expects from kids. He's not one that runs around raving about how good guys are. This guy's the real deal. This guy's a baby. He's only getting better. He's wired to compete, and he can, what you're seeing right now, he can do that with his whoever. He can rise up and pop a shot up off the dribble on his own, doesn't need help to get his shot off. I'm a huge fan of his. I think he's one of those sleeper guys that can become a star in the league.
John, are you as optimistic?
Incredibly efficient offensive player.
Sir.
Incredibly efficient offensive player. And another thing, One of the things that Virginia Tech played through this year and still had great success was the anchor of their team, Justin Robinson, missed an extended period of time with an injury. And in addition to a player named Wabissa Bede, Nickeil Alexander-Walker had to be in a situation where he could facilitate and initiate offense in spurts. So he's going to have to grow into that role more in the NBA, but incredibly efficient. Didn't play the best game of his career against Duke in the NCAA tournament, but I agree with Coach right now. A key cog in that Virginia Tech success the last couple of years.
Here's a line I like to use with players: accepts coaching. So that means that he's going to let people help him.
What do you make of the fit now in New Orleans? Because now he'll play behind Lonzo Ball, behind Jrue Holiday, at least for the moment. How do you think he fits in what the Pelicans are trying to do?
Well, the one thing you like about Nickeil is he has proven that he can make big-time shots, and he can be a situation where he can benefit from somebody setting the table. And look, I know Lonzo Ball was drafted 2 years ago, but you can't play Lonzo Ball and the Lonzo Ball that America fell in love with when he was at UCLA with somebody else who needs the ball at the point of attack. So everything that America loved when he was at UCLA, when they had that team with TJ Leaf and, Aaron Holiday and all those guys, Isaac Hamilton, I think there's a great chance you're going to see. If you play with Lonzo Ball and you're an efficient offensive player like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, you're worth 4 to 6 extra points a night.
Talk about playing with pace. Lonzo Ball, who I think his best attribute is pitching that ball ahead.
Yep.
This guy, Zion, Jackson Hayes.
Josh Hart.
Holy cow, Josh Hart. Talk about playing with pace. They got some greyhounds there.
Yeah, I mean, just to pivot to Lonzo Ball there, Dave, a couple years in Los Angeles, under a pretty big microscope coming out of UCLA, everything involved with his father. But purely as a basketball player, what did you see from him out of the first 2 years in the league?
I'm a fan. I'm positive on everybody mostly,
I'm a Lonzo fan too.
I just think if the greatest compliment you can pay a player is that people love to play with him.
Yes.
And I think people want to play with him. I think if he can get his injuries taken care of, he can see his jump shot is improving. I think this move for him is going to benefit his game.
No doubt.
Going to this market, playing for Alvin, playing the exciting brand that there's hope there. There's no doubt, and I think being part of that, I think is going to be very positive for him.
What I'm really curious about New Orleans right now, and we touched on this for a brief second, is when you have so many young players, how do you find everyone minutes? How do you make everyone feel like we're trying to develop you as well? On the flip side of that, what I do like is I think what they're going to do is foster a really competitive environment for these young guys in a way that, everyone who's going to play in New Orleans is going to have to earn their minutes now because they're going to have a lot of young prospects. They're going to have a lot of guys who need seasoning. And someone like Nickeil, if he's behind Josh Hart, if he's behind Jrue Holiday, he's going to have to earn his minutes. And I think that's a good carrot to have for a young guy, whether it's in practice or whatever. If you want to get on the court, you're going to have to show us something. And I think that's a good environment for him to be in.
I'm not sure how many games the Pelicans win next year, but they're probably going to be incredibly exciting and lead the league in turnovers. I'm going to predict that right now with that group.
What's funny is they're going to kind of turn around, and they're going to be the team a year or two from now that we talk about that has the assets and players to trade for the next big guy that goes onto the market. Because they're going to have a lot of, I think,
and those future LA considerations, those are going to be extremely valuable as trade chips, as we've seen with other teams using them in the past. All right, the Pacers have made their pick. Goga Bitadze, center from Mega BMAX in Georgia. For more on Goga, let's check in with Jake and Madeline.
Yeah, go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, sorry.
He's a 6'11" guy who can get up and down the court freaky fast, and that's what stands out to me immediately. But I'm going to let you go in a deeper dive because I know you got stuff to say.
One thing that stands out, which is going to be a little out of left field, he had a mustache and a goatee yesterday, now completely shaved. Just want to first of all throw that out there.
It's a fresh chapter for him. He's a professional now, so he wants to keep it clean.
The other thing is that Goga was getting a lot of interest as high as number 12 at Charlotte. And he was considered to be someone that the Spurs, especially today, were trying to trade and move up to get. But now, he's off the board at 18. It definitely leaves the Spurs to take Luka Samanic, the big guy for Croatia as well, who it's going to be the pick here at 19. And those guys were pretty much linked throughout the entire draft with the Spurs. Whichever one was available before 19 was not going to be the Spurs guy, but the Spurs are very happy to take Samanic here at 19 afterwards.
Yeah, and I mean, Batas, he's, really confident mid-range shooter. He's very fast, as I mentioned. He's also got some international experience. He's played with the Georgia national team, so he's got that as well. And the way that game will translate, it remains to be seen. But we're looking forward to seeing kind of what comes from him from the pro level. And we'll send it back to you guys for some more.
On to that 17th pick. The 18th pick. Round number 19 coming up shortly. We're now, John, at the point where we start to look at the guys still hanging out in the green room and wonder how long some of them are going to be there. Is there anybody that stands out as a big surprise to you at this moment?
Nasir Little from North Carolina. Now, Nasir Little struggled during the season and never really got into a rhythm, in spurts because of the college game and because, he had, the adjustment issue. But this young man struggled all year long understanding that being good and being consistent is not the enemy of being outstanding. And that's something that I think, you need to look at when you think about some of the players that have went ahead of him. Guys on his team, Cam Johnson, who were not projected to be NBA prospects of this magnitude, have went off the board ahead of him. And Nasir Little right now, again, a year ago, somebody who would have been a top 6 or 7 pick if he was a one and done, still on the board. To me, Chris, that's the name in bold print.
Frank, you surprised to see Nasir Little still sitting out there?
I don't know if surprised is the word.
That's a no right there. Hesitation.
Here's the thing, to John's point. You watched him in AAU basketball, which is where he made a name for himself. And he had the ball in his hands, and he made every play anytime he had the ball in his hands to score. Right. Now he gets to North Carolina, and he's got a point guard that's got the ball in his hands. And last time I checked, that kid got drafted like 5th or 6th. Yeah. And then he's got Cam Johnson on one wing. And I think what he struggled with the most was having to play with other real good players where the ball's not in his hands all the time. And, so it's a growth process, and he's going to experience the same thing in the NBA whenever somebody takes him.
Yeah, a chance to look for value here as the teams enter the bottom third of the first round. Teams with multiple picks still remaining. The 19th pick, as you heard Jake say, goes to Luka Samancic, a big man from Croatia. And, Dave, I just assume that every international player the Spurs take is going to turn into somebody that can play at a high level for like 15 years.
Yeah, they've definitely led the way the last 20-some years of scouting and overseas, and we're all trying to catch up with them, and they've done a great job. Fits their culture, fits their system. Pop does obviously a great job, and probably a good pick for them right here.
Yeah, John, what do you know about Luka?
Third guy on the board, I think, when you think about the foreigners in this draft. Again, somebody who, again, you may need some delayed gratification for. He might not be somebody who comes in and has an immediate impact. But, for the pecking order for foreigners in this draft, it was definitely Namboya. It was definitely Batazi. A lot of people that I talked to like Batazi ahead of Namboya because he fills the void that we have seen big men as pick and pop fives fill in the NBA playoffs. Again, don't want to cross the streams here, but you saw it with Lopez, you saw it with Jokic. That ability is now a big commodity in the NBA.
Dave, where do you think the Spurs are as a team right now? Because I thought it was interesting that they wanted DeMar DeRozan, who was under a long-term contract. It was pretty clear they wanted to stay competitive in the aftermath of the Kawhi Leonard trade. Now they're a team that is clearly still in the playoff mix every single year, but I'm not really sure what their path is to get back to that championship level.
Yeah, I think they're just fighting and scratching and clawing, and I respect that greatly. I don't know how it's going to come out. I know they had some injuries this year. Dejounte Murray is set to come back and have a strong year. I'm a big fan of his. DeMar, and depends what they do with Rudy Gay. LaMarcus Aldridge, I'm a big fan of. I believe this young man here has an opportunity to block some shots for them if he gets some minutes. They're trying to compete, and I respect the heck out of that. I don't know how their contracts and their salary caps work out going forward. We'll get to talk about that next week, but they are fighting.
They do an unbelievable job, Rohan, of just identifying the Murrays, who you mentioned, who missed the entire year with that ACL injury, the Bryn Forbes. just these guys that fly under the radar. All of a sudden, who knew what Derek White was capable of until this year when he finds his way into that starting line?
And it's just been going on for years. Gary Neal, what happened to Gary Neal after he left San Antonio? But he was killing it for them. Something that's hilarious to me about the Spurs is, we look at 5 years ago when they won in 2014 and beat the Heat in the finals. People were talking about the most beautiful basketball they'd ever seen, the passing, everything they had going. This year, all of a sudden, they trot out 2 mid-range guys, playing a style of basketball that's just completely out of fashion. It seems like Pop is almost doing it out of spite. He's like, this is how much I hate the three-pointer. We're not going to take any of them. I just thought it was hilarious. I'm just curious. I mean, Dave, you coaching him, so what it was like when the league is trending one way, and all of a sudden the Spurs are like, guess what? We're gonna choke you out from mid-range.
I don't think that. I think it's more so the style of the play of the players that they have. LaMarcus needs to hold it a little bit. Rudy Gay's a ball holder, and they're all great players, and obviously DeMar is as well. So what can happen? It puts a lot of pressure on you as a coach. I've been in these situations where it's my turn, your turn, his turn, my turn, your turn, his turn, and you have to really grab your point guard and make them facilitate that, or you can only play 2 of the 3 at one time ever, because 3 of them just does not work.
Yeah, the Combine, by the way, not the end-all be-all, but watching Luka there and talking to people in that gym, he made an impression at that Combine in front of people, and clearly San Antonio took notice. All right, R.J. Barrett was the 3rd overall pick in the draft. Madeline caught up with Barrett at the NBA Players Association headquarters, and he had some unexpected things to say, didn't he, Madeline?
Absolutely. I mean, we've heard a lot about his Canadian roots and his time in France. He's fluent in French and his relationship with his dad. But now that he's a member of the New York Knicks, I was very curious, because we kind of saw this one coming. I was curious what his favorite pizza was. So we went down that rabbit hole as well, but check it out.
All right, RJ, coming into this draft, Thursday night NBA draft, it's pretty consensus, like you, Zion, Ja, top 3 picks. You guys are all pretty close, too. What's your relationship like going through this process?
I mean, it's great. Definitely Zion was my roommate. That's my brother. We're very close, came very close over the year. And then John and I more recently have become friends, and he's a great guy, too. So, it's a lot of fun just being here with, guys that all have the same goal and are about the same things.
You and Zion, you guys have an interesting relationship, and I've heard you say in the past, too, that a lot of people thought you would clash with each other, and you kind of made it a priority to get along. How'd you do that?
We're so close off the court, and we kind of think the same way in terms of how we play the game, so we just want to win. And when you want to win, you do anything, so it doesn't really matter who else you're on the court with.
How would you describe the way you play the game?
I would say I just play hard. You see me in different games get 16 rebounds or 30 points or 11 assists. I just try to do whatever the team needs me to do to win. So I feel like I'm a very versatile player.
Now the Knicks, of course, have the number 3 pick. You've got roots in New York. It's very familiar. You got this whole island down, it seems like that. What would it mean for you to put on a Knicks jersey Thursday night? Or a Knicks hat?
I mean, it would definitely mean a lot. I have family in New York, so I've been here every summer, so it would mean a lot to me to put on that New York hat and get drafted to the Knicks.
What's your favorite thing about New York?
I love the way the people always have something to do. Everybody's always busy. Everybody's always working, grinding. I like that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Where do you go for a slice? If you need a piece of pizza, where's your go-to?
I like Domino's, so I just normally just order Domino's.
Domino's?
Yeah.
That's all right. I mean, that's fair. You got the New York roots. You're allowed to say, but still, man, Knicks fans. Do you dip your pizza in ranch?
Yes, every time.
I do too.
Yeah.
Why? Like, some people don't like that. What's with that?
I don't know. The ranch is good to me. I even sometimes mix it up. I even take some Chick-fil-A sauce and dip it in that. So I like to mix it up a little bit.
Wow, that's a pro tip. I'm gonna have to try that.
Yeah,
what do you think of people who put pineapple on pizza?
That's their choice. I mean, I don't hate it, but it's never gonna be my go-to.
If somebody pulled up with a Domino's pizza with pineapple, would you eat it or would you be like, no?
If it was my only choice, I would eat it.
You're very hungry, just got out the gym.
Or I could just take the pineapples off of them, so I'll be good.
That also works. Do you have your outfit picked out for Thursday night?
Yes, I do.
Got to already.
Yes, I do.
You're gonna give us a sneak peek what it is?
It's beautiful. When you see somebody walk by and you turn your head, just know it's gonna be me.
It's like a neck breaker outfit. People are
yes,
gonna be like,
it is.
what?
So I'm like, wow, he really wore that.
He really wore that. I'm excited for this. Do you think, what's the most memorable draft outfit you've seen in the past?
I'll go with Trae Young shorts.
Right?
See, LeBron kind of did that last year, but I didn't know somebody was gonna, pick that out at the draft. So Trae Young shorts for sure.
It's a good look. Now, obviously, we're here at this Panini event as well. Do you remember as a kid collecting cards like that?
I actually didn't collect cards, to be honest, but I know a lot of people that did. I had a lot of friends that did. And now just to see that I'm going to be on one of those cards is crazy.
It's going to be nuts, right? Your face, your jersey, all your stats on an autograph card. Like, can you imagine what it looks like?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just going to be a lot of fun, and I'm gonna kind of be in awe. I'm gonna keep a stack for myself. So.
Got to. Your little scrapbook collection.
Yes, that's fine.
What's your goal for your rookie season in the NBA?
Win Rookie of the Year, and win and possibly try and make it to the playoffs. So, just all those good things.
RJ Barrett, thanks so much for sitting down with us.
Thank you for having me.
He was in the green room.
All right, the 20th pick is in the books, and the Celtics had it, but they're trading it to the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Sixers will turn around and have now drafted Matisse Thybulle, the small forward out of Washington. John, what can you tell me about Matisse Thybulle?
Unbelievable defensive player, unbelievable kid. Spent some time with him last year in Seattle. A lockdown defender, somebody who Mike Hopkins regularly referred to as Deion Sanders in their 2-3 zone because of his ability to get in the passing lanes and get baskets in transition. The million-dollar question is this: how does somebody who made his living at the top of a 2-3 zone defensively transition to now guarding man-to-man predominant principles in the NBA? But Thybulle, obviously the prototype 3 and D guy. 21 to 30, I thought was the range for Matisse Thybulle. Again, didn't work out at the combine. Now he's in a situation where a first-round pick for what a lot of people thought, other than DeAndre Hunter, the best defensive player in college basketball last season.
And Dave, the Sixers need these first-round picks to pan out, because if things go the way they hope it goes, their financial situation is going to be pretty muddled over the next few years with the kind of money they're spending on their core four. You got to look at them last year playing together with Jimmy Butler alongside Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris. What did you think of that grouping together in a short period of time?
It is difficult to go through that, and I came up through the minor leagues, and so players come and go through injury, getting called up to the NBA and whatnot, or you just move them on and bring in somebody else. And so they had a tough season as far as putting it all together. I thought Brett did a good job. I thought they stayed with who they are stylistically. They're going to need, what you're saying is some of these guys are going to need to play while still on their first contract before they get to their second contract and really eat into the salary cap. And so they obviously they liked him and targeted him to get this pick.
Rowan, if you're the Sixers, do you go all out to get everybody back? Because what I've been told, Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris are not taking hometown discounts to stay with Philadelphia.
This is a little bit of a strange situation, but I think for them, I'd almost rather have Harris moving forward than Butler. If you can get, say, Harris for something less than a max, I mean, maybe he commands it. I know Jimmy was really important for them in the playoffs, but he's a little bit older than the core they have right there. He's on a little bit of a different timeline. Do you want to pay Jimmy Butler, max money when he's getting closer to his mid-30s? I think Harris, especially considering what they gave up for him, Shamet looks like a player. You bring him back, and he just slots in. I think he makes more sense as a third star. I do have a question for Frank a little bit. We talked about Thybulle being one of the better defenders in college. I'm curious, what do you think separates guys at that level? You have a guy like DeAndre Hunter, now Thybulle, great defenders. What separates guys at those levels in terms of, between being a good defender and not?
Desire. I think the competitiveness, and when I was a kid growing up, the guy who was our coach in our neighborhood who coached us in high school, he'd make us play one-on-one. And I don't care how bad I was athletically, if I didn't stop that guy from scoring, he would not let me out of the drill. Right. And so it creates a competitiveness within you. IQ. Some of the best defenders aren't the most athletic guys in the world. So they have great minds. And then size and strength. You got to have, I call it, they chase the ball. You got to have guys that have that instinct to know where the ball's at, to be able to stick their face in front of the ball. And I could be wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, I'm listening to you guys talk about the necessity for these draft picks to play for Philadelphia. I think he's 22 years old already. So he's not an 18, 19-year-old guy. He's a little better prepared to take on that challenge.
Delayed gratification. Seasoned college players.
Is that that tuna fish sandwich?
Hey, look, I'm pounding the drum right here.
He does also give Philly, I think, a little bit of what it lost in that Covington deal. Yeah. Something that's I want to throw out about the Sixers. I think if they knew at the start of last season they were getting Tobias Harris, I don't know that they would have traded for Jimmy Butler, if only because Covington and Saric was a big key of what made them so successful when they ran out to 50 wins. Really great defensively, really great starting five. I think getting a 3-and-D guy, a guy, you said chase the ball type, they need guys like that, and that gives them a little bit back of what they lost.
Here to answer your question even more, and this is how I do it, because it's the way I learned to this day. We do one-on-one and two-on-two drills daily. And the guys that don't try to get better defensively, I rarely play them extended minutes.
Yeah, these so the trades keep coming here. Memphis has traded up from the 23rd pick to 21 with Oklahoma City. And this is one of those drafts, Rohan, where it felt coming in that maybe GMs thought it might be a little bit weak, and we're kind of seeing that play out with teams trying to trade down or trade out of some of these spots.
Yeah, it's funny. I think we all expected a little bit more action tonight in terms of first-round trades. Jake was hitting us with his stats earlier in terms of the number of first-round draft trades, first-round picks. But I think because there are no sure things, they're not even like, I don't think there are a lot of high floor guys left in this draft either. I think teams aren't really desperate to kind of get in here. Oklahoma City, though, is one of those teams, Sam Presti always maneuvering, always looking for even the tiniest edge he can get, whether it's a little more cash, another second-round draft pick. So I'm curious to see, what the full terms of this trade are. But I kind of think what we're seeing right now is maybe there aren't a ton of those high floor guys out there left that teams are clamoring for.
I want to make a point right now. You had 3 guys who came into last season as YouTube-type sensations. Nasir Little's one. Kevin Porter Jr., who dominated a rec league in Los Angeles before he played a game's another, and Bowles the third, and all 3 have not gone in the top 20.
Don't get excited about highlight film.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Again, Mark, Frank, I just feel like you're targeting me. Frank, when you say that, because I love the YouTube highlight. That's how I would recruit personally.
You'd be in a lot of trouble keeping my job.
All right. Memphis has decided to make their pick. It's going to be Brandon Clarke, power forward out of Gonzaga. For more on Clarke, let's check in with Madeline and Jake.
Yeah, well, I actually had a chance to speak to Brandon on the red carpet earlier today out at Barclays on the draft. He and Rui Hachimura came by and talked to us, the 2 Gonzaga teammates. First of all, you guys got to check this out.
Have you ever been to Japan?
I have not, but I'm definitely going to end up going with him soon, hopefully.
Are you guys going to plan like a road trip? Not a road trip, obviously. A vacation out there anytime?
Yeah, for sure. I might invite him, yeah.
What would you show your teammates or your friends when you take them back to Japan?
I would like to take him maybe Tokyo. Tokyo is a big city like here, so I think he would like it, yeah.
Now, I got to ask you, you guys had a legendary coach at Gonzaga. What kind of advice does he give you when you head into the NBA draft process?
Probably just to not really freak out and to be calm about it, really, and that any team that drafts us is going to be very lucky, and that there's always draft trades, so don't really be too nervous about all that.
Was there anything that stuck out to you?
I mean, he always tell me keep walking hard. He told me I gotta control what I can. I can't control other things, but I gotta control what I can. Yeah.
Now, Mark Few, obviously a big influence on both of these guys. Brandon Clarke heading out to being the number 21 pick, headed to the Memphis Grizzlies. This is a guy who, he's an energy big man. He's got a high motor. Shot blocking and defensive versatility is on point. Jake, what are your initial impressions of what we're seeing here?
The key thing you said was big man, and Brandon Clarke is only 6'8", so he's drawn a lot of comparisons to Jordan Bell in Golden State, who at Oregon, and when he was in college, was a shot blocking menace, switched on the perimeter, forced a lot of steals. I mean, Clarke himself had 4.5 blocks and 1.7 steals per 40 minutes this season at Gonzaga. But the big question here, and the reason why he fell, is because of that height. There's a lot of skepticism amongst NBA, personnel and executives and decision makers that Clarke's limitations physically are going to hurt him covering frontcourt players, as we saw with Bell this season, even in the finals just now. The real thing here that's interesting is that the Thunder, from what I'd heard around the league, were really actively trying to move the 21st pick, but not to move back to select somebody to attach that pick with salary to lower their tax bill. They're really approaching a $200 million salary bill with Russell Westbrook and Andre Robertson and Steven Adams' 3 big contracts on the books. I don't know if that's going to be continuing here at 23, but Memphis jumping up to get Clarke is the real surprise to me, because I talked to somebody there this morning and they were looking to trade out and maybe move back, get some second-round capital later on, potentially gets an established player. So the fact that they were going to move up and get their guy shows, despite the limitations of Clarke's size, that the Grizzlies really did like him.
Yeah, I mean, this guy was WCC Defensive Player of the Year. He gets a little bit of the Shawn Marion comparison. Chris, guys, I'm curious if you guys see that as well.
Well, let me ask you, John. There's the Shawn Marion comparison made to Brandon Clarke. He's got a great defensive pedigree, of course, from what he did in college. But does he have the size to play the NBA game.
You know, the big thing right now that's in question with Brandon Clarke from an offensive perspective is, can he develop the outside ability to make three-point shots like Shawn Marion used to make from that corner spot when the Suns, when the Suns had Amari Stoudemire at the 5, 15 years ago. But, Brandon Clarke only made 6 3-point shots in his collegiate career. Now, from everything I gathered from talking to people who were in his workouts, he improved his outside range in the workouts. Defensively, he's punching everything that's at the rim. He is a high-level shot blocker, and he's a high-level efficiency player from a field goal percentage. But the big questions for him, does he have the strength up top defensively, and can he be in a situation where he can evolve into more of a face-up player on the offensive side?
Dave, can you be a power forward or any kind of forward in today's NBA without having a three-point shot? Seems like that's gone from...
Oh, you got to play center.
Well, all right, then, even centers, though, nowadays. Marc Gasol turned himself into a three-point shooter the last few years.
Yeah, you mentioned some of them, Brooke, Jokic, Marc Gasol, but you got to be able to shoot the basketball if you're going to play the 4. But otherwise, Jordan Bell's been playing 5. It's changing.
That's my question. Do you think he could turn into a rim runner type at least? Like, is that possible for him if the shooting doesn't get there?
Well, the big thing though too is this is somebody again who is not the size of somebody that would be a rib runner at the 5, and it's not like it's a small ball 5 who has great skills like a Draymond or a Zion in some spurts. This is somebody again who was punching everything at the rim, but it goes back to what I was saying with Rui Hachimura from the West Coast Conference perspective. He didn't have the physical toll of playing in a high major conference night in, night out. Now, I know that Gonzaga still went to the Elite 8, but we still need to see how he's going to respond to that. Remember, this is a young man who started his college career at San Jose State before opting to go to Gonzaga.
Shawn
Marion.
I remember watching him play. I don't think it's fair to compare this guy to Shawn Marion at the same stage of their career. Shawn Marion was an athletic. We're talking about the corner 3. That was at the end of his career. When Shawn Marion got into the league, his athleticism, his rebounding, his ability to guard was an elite level. I'm not saying he's not going to do it. Here's one thing. You're worried about me being mad. That's because I'm big and all that. Why don't everyone, Mark Few, everyone says he's such a nice guy. He's one of the fiercest competitors in our business. You make him mad, see what would happen.
Listen, I'm just saying when I'm watching the college game, there's some coaches, it drips off the screen and you're one of them.
Yeah, I'll say this to you. Gonzaga's got real good players, but they don't win because Mark Few's that nice of a guy.
I mean, look, when Memphis is in that position where they can take the best player on the board no matter what. They've got holes at virtually every spot. You have the luxury of doing that. But, Dave, I thought that your run in Memphis and that run of Gasol and Conley and Tony Allen, I thought that was kind of slowed by the fact that Memphis didn't draft all that well, over the last few years. Like, these are the kind of picks that you got to hit on in order to be a successful franchise.
In order to sustain, as your team moves on and ages at some point, I think Toronto's done a nice job in this.
Excellent.
Adding Pascal, adding Fred, they've kind of stoked that back half of and those guys now come along and are ready. And sometimes as you're going through this journey as your guys go from young to older and they stay together and you get into second and third contracts, to get to that level, like you're talking about with Charlotte, you go all in, and when you commit to going all in, you're going to spend some of those picks. Then you're not even going to have them to add that one more piece to get you over the hump. And it is the West. It's a nuclear arms race every single year. And so you're going to do that. And we did that, and I don't think we missed too often, but it was a heck of a run.
Let's not pile on Coach
It's not him making the picks. I'm piling on his
Come on, all right.
I'm just jumping on his. You're now playing the.
I am. Before this show even started, I was telling Coach Dave how much I love those Grizzlies teams. He can tell you all about it.
I love those Grizzlies teams too. If some of those draft
You want to bring up? He just wants to bring up Hasheem Thabeet so bad.
No, I just want to bring up Jordan Adams as much as I want to bring up some of these guys that didn't quite pan out there. Boston, they are sitting there with the 22nd overall pick, and they are selecting Grant Williams out of Tennessee. Now, John, I'm just envisioning the reaction in Boston right now to the Romeo Langford Grant Williams draft. Not probably the most enthusiastic reaction from Celtic fans. What are they getting?
Yeah, but with Grant Williams, you're getting somebody that's going to be a long-time pro. I would say if you're looking for a comparison, think Clarence Weatherspoon that type of a player.
This is like insane. Like you are just hot tub time machine out here with some of these names.
I'm just saying, this is an undersized guy who, does work, has improved his shooting, a workman, blue-collar type player, but, somebody, again, who went through a situation where he was not highly recruited and developed a lunch pail type mentality, but, the epitome of an undersized power forward.
Frank, you got a good look at him. How do you project him?
I love him. I love him. He was a pudgy 6'5" kid in high school that no one gave a chance to, and he's worked his tail off. You see, he went Clarence Witherspoon. I'm going to go kind of more modern day. He's more Draymond Greenish to me. He is, if you doubled him, you might sneak it on him one time. He's hitting the open man the next time. He's got a great mind for the game, can really pass, got a lot better. He started off as a low post player. If you watch them play towards the end of the year, Rick started running ISOs for him at the top of the key, and he became a playmaker for them, and unbelievable competitor.
John, he mentioned Draymond Green. Does he have the defensive instincts to play like Draymond Green?
I don't want to step on Frank's turf right now and talk about defensive prowess. I mean, this guy went to a Final Four. I don't see the magic feat that you see with Draymond, but, I defer all defensive, questions to Frank the rest of the way. I learned what Rohan did years ago.
I didn't say he is Draymond Green.
Right.
I'm referring to his skill set, an okay shooter that's strong off the dribble and that can really pass the ball on offense as an undersized guy. Defensively, he's used to guarding fives. He's going to have to learn how to guard away from the basket.
Rohan, you are the resident pig piler on the Celtics. What do you make of this?
Let's not make this all about my hatred for the Celtics. It's also just sometimes I want to see that perfectly gelled hair of yours get rankled a little bit. So like going after Boston's really the only way. I'm genuinely curious though, your thoughts on what this kind of means for the offseason. Do you see them going forward with these guys they picked? I mean, do they factor into the score? The bigger picture question I think for the Celtics is we talked a lot about timelines on this, on the show so far. Do you think Boston will now kind of revert back to a rebuilding team, or do you think Danny Ainge is still going to try to hit both where he's bringing along young guys while also trying to get the title?
I don't think they're a rebuilding team. I think like Memphis is a rebuilding team. Right. So, some of these other teams, New York is a rebuilding team. The Celtics still have two high-level players in Tatum and Brown. They still have Hayward, who I think is going to be a lot better in his second year removed from the injury than he was this year. But it's fair to wonder if their kind of window has slammed shut here for a second, because
I mean they got unfortunate that they couldn't move these picks.
Well, it is that, but
Who says that's unfortunate? There's a lot
They're
of dudes,
fans.
I think there's a lot of dudes in the league that are happy that you guys, you've been piling up these picks for years and years. Here, have some of this. I'm not saying that these players, they're stuck with these players. No way, shape, or form. But they have a house of draft picks over there and plenty of people on the outside going, hey, haha.
Dave understands where I'm coming from.
Yeah, there's a little angst out there.
It's like rewards points with them with picks.
Yeah.
Crazy. I mean, seriously. Unbelievable.
What did you make, Dave, of watching from afar of what was going on in Boston? I know they played them twice a year, but they came into the season with such enormous expectations. Conference finalists, 2 all-star level players coming back, and then it just never seemed to come together. It's kind of evidence that talent isn't everything in the NBA.
Yeah, it was a tough deal. They do have some overlap of similar positions they have threes. In my mind, Tatum's a 3, and we all want to size down and play smaller and smaller and smaller ball. You had different expectations from different guys coming in who, as you mentioned, they went so far in a situation a year before, and now they're young. They're 19 and 20. Their expectations go up also about their role. And one thing I've found, Coach, over the years, I don't know how it is with you, you can bring the exact same team back from one year to the next, and roles can change because we have a fluid game. Guys move up, guys move down, things happen, injuries happen. And I think that's some of the things that happened there. You had some personalities. You also had that guy out of Milwaukee. He's pretty good, had a pretty good year. Toronto made some great moves, and everything came together for them. I think Boston's still a second round. Just straight up right now, if Kyrie leaves, they're still in the second round in the East, easy.
I think it's just kind of evidence that saying you're going to sacrifice is a little bit harder than actually sacrificing. I think all the players at the end of the year and to start the season all said the right things, but you get into it and all of a sudden, well, my shots aren't up. I'm standing in the corner more than I used to. I'm not getting my own type of plays. it's extremely difficult, and Boston was a good example of that.
The season teaches your team how to win or how to lose.
Yeah.
You don't figure that one out in the summer.
You're right. You're right. All right, now we're primarily here for the draft, but the results of this evening also have a huge effect on what happens in free agency. So to help us keep track of what has happened, Rohan has a free agency board. Rohan, tell us what you've got here.
Guys, as you can see, this is a classic, yarn and thumbtack situation. Just trying to make sense of everything that's been happening. I think the interesting thing about tonight is, frankly, the lack of action. We haven't seen kind of those big moves. We haven't seen teams, maybe angle for cap space. So this is just right now, I think, from what we've heard, where I think guys are going to end up. So first we have the Manics' favorite, Kyrie Irving. I think after tonight, it still looks like the Nets for him. That's what we've heard all season. I don't think anyone's made a big play in terms of getting cap space or getting that second star. I still like Durant to the Knicks. I almost think Durant has to approach the summer with the mentality of, I'm going to do what I always did. I don't want to give teams the impression that I'm going to take a step back in my career. I'm going to take a year off. I think Klay Thompson's going to stick with Golden State. The Al Horford is the interesting one. I mean, and Mannix can speak to this a little bit. He's kind of the guy where I think people assumed he was going to go back to Boston. I think the Mavericks are a really intriguing fit for him. Dallas can open up a max slot this summer. I don't think they're going to want to play Porzingis at the 5 for an entire season, especially as he comes off an ACL injury. So the one I really want to talk about is Al Horford and where he thinks going to end up. The Clippers are interested. He's going to get interest all over the league. I mean, he's been Boston's unsung hero all these years. I like the fit for him in Dallas. I'm curious what you guys over there think about that little prediction I got going on.
Yeah, Al Horford with the Mavericks makes some sense because the Mavericks over the years have tried to be big players in free agency. It hasn't always worked out because they've missed on a bunch of guys. They went after Dwight Howard, they went after Chris Paul, they went after all the big name players. But I can see Al Horford making some sense with that group. I'm with you, Rowan. I don't think that Al Horford, well, I know that Porzingis isn't a 5. Al doesn't want to play the 5, but Dave, he might be better suited as a 5 in the kind of evolving NBA and the way he plays the game.
It'll be interesting. The West is different than the East. It is, and I think Porzingis can play 5 in the West. And I don't know that you can never have enough. I mean, if you want to get a couple more max guys, one thing Dallas has done over the last 5 years while Dirk was getting to the end of his career, the best team in the league at getting 1 year and 2 year contracts, value, giving themselves flexibility year after year after year. They're going to get somebody in free agency. Doncic, Porzingis, I can't wait to watch that. That's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, something that's I think going to be interesting this summer is there's a lot of teams with cap space, and now especially with Klay and KD dealing with injuries, the top level talent we expected to be there this summer isn't necessarily going to be there. In terms of consolation prizes, quote unquote, I think you could do a lot worse than Al Horford. I think he brings so much to your team. Dave, something that people on Twitter love to talk about, while we're watching the games and you're coaching in them, but just the effect Al Horford has on the Celtics. We know him as the Embiid stopper, and you see it especially in the playoffs, just how much he brings to that team. I'm curious, you as a coach, someone who coached against the Celtics many times in your career, can you explain what makes him such kind of an underrated superstar for the Celtics? Or at least he was.
He bothers me playing against him because he's just he's a winner. You know what I mean? He's a winner. They won at Florida. Everywhere he goes in the NBA, they win.
Right.
He makes the right plays. And there's 82 games. You're going to have some bad nights. And I've caught a couple of them with him, but not very often. He's given us fits. The guy who had success against him was Zach. Zach will put his body on him. There wasn't a lot that he could do with that. But against centers, he bothers centers with his quickness and his brains. And I can't say enough good things about him.
You know what gets me is we always try to get the guy that doesn't win, and we think we can make him win.
Right.
And then the guy like Al Horford that wins everywhere, we always want to say, well, what's wrong with
We look at the warts.
It's unbelievable. We confuse our lives for no reason.
Yeah, look, I don't blame Al Horford at all for, saying, sorry, Boston. He's 33 years old. This is his probably last chance to get a big-time contract. I think there will be a team out there with a 4-year deal for him at a significant number.
Wow.
When the dust settles on kind of those first-tier free agents, there are 9 teams out there with $19 million or more in cap space. Several of them are going to be standing there in like July 7th or 8th being like, where do we spend this money? Right. And Al Horford's going to look like an appealing option to a Clippers or a Mavericks or maybe even a Knicks team that doesn't have other options there.
I'm a little worried. Our guy has nothing headed to the Miami Heat. He's not going to have a meltdown on us.
I told them I wouldn't do the show. I need a Heat logo on there just in case.
Are you from Miami?
I'm from South Florida, Broward County. Yeah, my Frank Martin gets it. There we go.
You guys are back
We're
on
back in.
now.
We're back in. Baby. The last 5 picks are just going to be Frank telling Udonis Haslem stories. So stick around for that.
That is a high-tech board you have over there, Rohan.
It really, the crossover guys, shout out Anthony and Hirsch, they spared no expense for the show. They were like, Rohan, you could have whatever you want. What is it? And I said, get me a board and some yarn. They wouldn't let me smoke any cigarettes in here, but at least we got the board up there. And yeah, I was hoping for some more trades so we could really get it going, but hopefully something still breaks.
All right, we have breaking news now with the Thunder taking with the 23rd pick. They select Darius Baisley, small forward who did not play in college, originally committed, John, to Syracuse, decided to bow out, originally was going to go play in the G League, backed out of that, elected just to work out on his own. He interned over at New Balance, where I think he designed the new Kawhi sneakers. Is his role out there. But this is an interesting pick for Oklahoma City, which is known for doing things like this.
Yeah, and this is somebody, again, who was expected to be a major cog at Syracuse if he went to college. Would have been great in the 2-3 zone. Very similar to a young Tayshaun Prince with his ability to get a rebound, start a break, initiate offense. Somebody that, for all intents and purposes, can be multi-talented position-wise in the NBA. Another thing, too, that was really impressive from talking to a lot of NBA scouts and executives, he interviewed very well during the pre-draft process. So somebody, if he went to college, would have definitely been a known commodity in the ACC at Syracuse.
Frank, I want to ask you about Baisley's decision to go play, or not play, for lack of a word, this season, go and play and work at New Balance and work out on his own. We've seen guys do this periodically, going overseas sometimes to go play. Now you have R.J. Hampton doing the same thing, decided to go to Australia and play. Does it concern you at all that there are now alternate routes for these guys that more and more seem to start to explore?
Not at all. We forget there's a young man from California that left after his sophomore year in high school to go overseas to play. Tyler, I think, was his last name.
Yeah, Jeremy Tyler.
And this has been going on for a while. We just never talk about it. It's I'm happy for him because they don't all have to come to college. The college basketball fan base is completely different than the NBA fan base. It's two completely different audiences, and I'm happy that he's opening that door for others to be able to do what he just did, which is not play in the G League, not go overseas, just get a job and go work out. And it's worked out for him. Obviously, he just got drafted. And now reality's going to hit him in the face. He's going to have to line up and go up against grown men every single day. And 3 years from now, we'll find out if it worked out or it didn't.
And for as good as somebody can be in a workout, he still has not played competitive basketball in a very long time. That's another thing I think we need to look at. It's one thing to work out and be with your trainer and work on your game. It's different when you're in hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah, I don't think the New Balance pickup runs are going to be as intense as. What's funny is, you got on my guy Dave here earlier about Memphis not being able to pick up those guys in the first round. I got to say, Oklahoma City, for as long as they've existed, as long as I've lived, have just needed one more shooter. And I understand that's way easier said than done. Every team wants one more shooter. But they've desperately needed a small forward or shooting guard who can hit a three-pointer. It hasn't been Andre Roberson. I don't know if it's going to be Hamidou Diallo. John can maybe speak to this more. Does Baisley have that potential to be the 3-and-D guy they've needed for a long time? This is a fake trade that I threw out earlier today on SI.com, but I am curious because I think it does make some sense for both sides. Hear me out. What if the Thunder sent Steven Adams? Now remember, Steven Adams did not play in their most important minutes against the Blazers. Their season was on the line. He was on the bench. They went small. Can they trade him into the Knicks cap space and get a guy like Courtney Lee back? Because I think they desperately need shooting.
That's definitely what I was asking myself when I woke up this morning.
I'm just saying they need shooting.
Why would the Knicks do that?
I think the Knicks are not going
to.
The Knicks are not going to get a couple max guys this summer. I think they're going to get one. Adams is not on an awful contract. He's got a couple years after this one, and I think that they could use, again, like I said, singles and doubles. That's a solid move for the Knicks. It doesn't take a ton off the table.
That is not a solid move for the Knicks, who already are trying to bring back DeAndre Jordan at the end of the year. Why would they want Steven Adams?
I think he's better than DeAndre Jordan at this point.
Okay.
America needs more Rohan.
You need more.
He needs his own. He needs his own.
Is it safe to say that a guy like Adams takes care of Russell Westbrook for 82 games?
Absolutely.
You can't get rid of that guy.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with Frank ever again.
How is
so
it a
I
fake
think
trade? That's what I want to know. Just in the cap checker?
He just puts it in the trade machine and sees what happens.
Sam Presti's eyes bled when he listened to your
Oh, hey man, my eyes bleed when I watch Sam Presti trot out these teams that can't shoot. And they had Cantor, they had Adams, they tried to play those guys together. And we saw it hurt them in this series against the Blazers. They paid Adams a lot of money. What are you going to do when you can't put a guy like that on the floor? I'm not saying he's not valuable, and him and Westbrook are great together in the regular season. But it says something to me. We talk about winners, we talk about guys who aren't on the floor. What does it say when your coach doesn't trust someone or can't use him when your season is truly on the line?
What do you say to that, Dave? What does Oklahoma City need to make that jump from being a first-round, second-round type of playoff team to that championship level?
We've played them in so many playoff series going back through the years, and when Durant was there and without. So it's a tough spot when you have three guys making over $100 million. Just those three. How do you put complementary players around them? And you have to hit the draft picks you talked about with Memphis. If we didn't get those guys, first contract guys need to participate and play to support that. I think Courtney Lee's with the Dallas Mavericks, by the way.
That's right. Yeah, it's just straight in the Mavericks cap space. Now, as Al Horford
I'm there for you, brother.
Yeah,
I'm there for you, brother.
Coach Dave saving me. Now it makes a little bit more sense. The Mavericks could use him.
But a young guy like this, I think they did Terrence Ferguson also, played in Adelaide.
Yep.
By the time this kid ever plays,
it's going to be years.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like Russ, are those guys still going to be there? So we'll see what he becomes as a player.
Yeah, Russ on the other side of 30 now. You have to start.
Mavericks could use Steven Adams. I like that trade even more now.
What? Okay. All right. The pick is in at 24. The Celtics, they move back to take the Sixers pick in this slot. 24th pick, they select Ty Jerome, guard for Virginia. Jake, you've got a little bit more on Ty Jerome.
Thanks, Chris. With Jerome, he's someone that throughout the season emerged as a legitimate first-round type talent with the shooting ability in his defense. And a lot of teams were, very impressed by his footwork, his ability to guard across a couple positions. The wingspan is a little bit short, which gave some teams pause. But this guy has the intangibles that a lot of teams think could be kind of like Jalen Brunson, a potential starter or a really, really good backup in this league. And we talked about it at the top with the Cam Johnson pick. Phoenix desperately needed a point guard, and they get their man now at Jerome. He's someone that the entire league had really penciled in at 26, though, to Cleveland. So this makes sense that Phoenix jumped up to get him at 24, being that Jerome has a long connection with the Cavs GM, Kobe Altman. When Altman was an assistant at Columbia back in the day, he had recruited him to play. And there's a picture going around on Twitter about Ty Jerome in high school wearing a Cleveland Cavaliers sweatshirt dating back to, when he was a teenager. So that, to me, spells out why Phoenix jumped up here, because all week Jerome was penciled in at 26 to the Cavs.
Yeah, and this kid, as you mentioned, the Suns have needed a point guard for a very long time. He is a tough, willing defender. There, may arise issues when he's got bigger, tough opponents who might give him some trouble, but he really creates good looks for both himself and his teammates. And I think it's going to be interesting to see him plugged in, especially with that young roster that Phoenix has as well. Now, another pick that's been in too, Nasir Little has been selected at 25. He was also asked about the weirdest question he got in any of his pre-draft interviews. Here's what he said.
I've only gotten one weird question.
What was that?
If you're locked in the car and all you have is a hammer, how would you get out of the car?
All right, so this is a very interesting question. If you're locked in a car, first of all, Nasir Little, number 25 pick to Portland. But if you're locked in a car and all you have is a hammer, Jake, how do you get out of the car?
I guess I'm going window, right?
Which window are you choosing?
Isn't there a thing where you kick the front? Isn't that
So you'd kick it? You wouldn't even use the hammer to break the window?
I do a dual kick hammer motion.
And you're not worried about shattered glass? You're just escaping the vehicle with the dual kick hammer?
Well, now that I think about it, in Pineapple Express, doesn't James Franco try to kick it and his foot gets stuck?
I just don't understand why you couldn't just push the unlock button.
Yeah.
That's what I want to know. But I also want to know what the actual answer to this question was. And I'm very curious what your answers are too, so please tweet them at us. But here's how this ended.
I said I would break the window, but the guy said, why not just unlock the door? So I got it wrong.
That's
That's what I said. Why not just unlock the door? If you're locked in the car, who says you can't unlock it yourself? Mannix, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that's 2 minutes of my life I'm never going to get back right there on this. Before we move on to Nasir Little, Phoenix is going to get Ty Jerome. They're looking for a point guard. Do you see Ty Jerome as a potential starter in this league?
He could be, and it goes back to what Frank and I were talking about earlier. If you took Ty Jerome off Virginia, a system where he averaged 13 or 14 points, 5 or 6 assists, 5 or 6 rebounds, and took him and put him on North Carolina instead of Kobe White, he might be a late lottery pick in this first round in this NBA draft. I look at Ty Jerome, I see Grievous Vasquez physically and Jose Calderon instinctively. The game never gets too fast for Ty Jerome. And again, when you think about what his statistics could be if he didn't play for the slowest tempo in the country, you're talking about somebody who at 24 could be a bargain.
Reminds me a lot of somebody, his demeanor, not as a player, his demeanor, his makeup, what he's about. The guy played for me in high school, Steve Blake. You know, he's a winner. Steve Blake won a state championship in high school, won a national championship at Maryland, played at 2 Final Fours, and then, you know, and then he goes to the NBA. And Kobe Bryant, of all people, says that that's his ultimate competitive teammate. Yeah. Ty Jerome has that competitive gene. Those guys that got I never put anything past the guys that got that competitive gene. Ty Jerome has that. A heck of a basketball player. You know, how good is he going to do in the NBA? We're going to find out. But I can tell you this, he's a winner.
Dave, they've been looking for a while for the right type of point guard to play alongside Devin Booker, who is the franchise player. I mean, what kind of player and what kind of playmaker does Devin Booker need to play beside? Because he's also a guy that handles the ball a lot at the two-guard position.
Well, he better get one that's real fast because De'Aaron Fox is fast.
Yes.
And if Ty Jerome thinks that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a whole other level in the Western Conference, especially night in, night out. The point guards out there, it's silly. So you better get your jump rope out and get ready to go. Speed level it takes a jump.
All right, we have our biggest faller, I guess you should call him, off the board right now. The Portland Trail Blazers sitting there at number 25. They have selected Nasir Little out of North Carolina, who John has stumbled a little bit, was projected maybe to go sometime in the late lottery. He has fallen all the way to number 25.
He's fallen to 25 now. If you look at this is another example of the Blazers probably having a chance to build through the draft. You get a guy who was expected to be a lottery pick at 25. Nasir Little, somebody, again, who had moments with North Carolina. They were 17-1 when he scored in double figures. Chris, he only made 14 three-point shots last year as a freshman in North Carolina. That, to me, I know was a big concern in terms of having to have an ability to cement your place on that wing. Also, when you think about the transition for Nasir Little, and Coach Martin talked about this earlier, you know, an assistant GM told me this week, you're looking at somebody who was really good in AAU basketball and really good for North Carolina, but in the confines of an NBA game where you're going to have to learn, read, react with a 24-second shot clock, that was a big concern of a lot of executives in terms of learning an offense and learning to obviously play in a small shot clock. So I think that's one of the reasons why you saw Nasir Little take a dip.
Frank, we talked about this. Nasir Little, if he came out of high school, might have been projected somewhere in that top 10, falls to 25. What happened in college?
It's no different than some of these rookies that show up in the NBA and they don't play as well as they thought they were supposed to when they go right out of high school. You know, and he was he was on a college team that had a lot of real good players too. And it's not as easy to get on the floor. I think his biggest adjustment, I saw him play a lot in high school. He was wired. I'll say this now, he's competitive. He's not some kind of go through the motions guy. Yeah. He's a competitive kid. He chases the ball. He rebounded the ball as well as any wing on the AAU circuit. There's a reason why in the McDonald's game he's an All-American, because he chases that ball and he attacks the rim. What happens in all those All-American, All-Star kind of games? Nobody guards the rim, so he attacked the rim all the time. As he gets better as a shooter, which I think he will, and he learns how to play without the ball in his hands, I think he'll adapt and become a pretty good player.
And Dave, I like this roll of the dice for Portland because this is a team that because of some of the salaries they've got in their books, doesn't have a lot of flexibility to go out and add talent. Nasir Little, given what he was projected as, I think that's a pretty good gamble to take if you're the Trailblazers, who are trying to find high-level talent at a cheap price.
I think they've done a nice job of it too. You had Jake Layman, you had Pat Connaughton. They've got Aminu off the books, I think, this year, so there is an opening there. Connaughton obviously gone, but they've done a nice job. Neil Olshey, and also partnering with your head coach, Terry Stotts. Works with these guys. They develop these guys. Again, I think this is a very good pick, a value pick here, and he's going to fit into the West, get up and down the floor, and show his athleticism.
Yeah, I actually really like it for the Blazers in terms of, at this point in the draft, you're just kind of look to take a little bit of a swing, I think, and you're getting a guy who had a lot of talent as a high schooler. I think that's a good move for them. One thing I'll say, Coach Martin mentioned he likes to have the ball in his hands. We've seen Portland kind of use Evan Turner in that role off the bench, a bigger guy who handles the ball. Maybe Little, it can do that in the future. I do think the Blazers are going to try to get in the trade market, look for a third guy there. Could they move someone like Harkless? Could they move someone like Evan Turner? In that case, I think Little becomes even more valuable to them.
Yeah, I'm not so sure you can move Evan Turner with his contract there. But look, the Blazers had a terrific run last season. I think the big wild card for them is going to be when does Jusuf Nurkic come back, and what does he look like when he comes back coming off that?
Oh, that was awful.
Pretty grotesque injury he suffered at the end of the season. All right, part of the trade that the Celtics made with the Suns, they sent Aaron Baines to Phoenix as well as part of the pick that Phoenix acquires, the 24th pick. Boston punts a little bit on their first-round pick this year, gets a 2020 first-round pick back from the Suns. I tell you, I'm starting to get a little puzzled with what the Celtics are doing here, because Aaron Baines opted in to a pretty cheap contract with the Celtics. This is a great team guy there who is a terrific defensive player. Their numbers were through the roof. You saw him, you played against him last year. When Baines is on the floor, Boston, Rohan, plays great basketball.
He's sneaky good for them. I mean, you saw their lineup stats when he was on the floor. They played really well when he was there. The young guys especially played really well with him. And especially for a move like in this area of the draft, it's not like Boston, kind of swung up and got into the lottery or something like that. Like, it just seems so inconsequential to just dump a guy like that, unless Boston is now kind of selling out for cap space. I don't really understand it, but in this area of the draft, to kind of just dump a guy like that, who, especially, again, if Horford leaves, I mean, who's going to play center for them? It's kind of weird to me.
I have no idea, but you guys were talking about some of those comments going on, and I think Brad and Danny are connected at the hip, maybe because of some of that inside noise becoming public. Maybe that's where there's some changes going on.
Oh, I think there's truth to that. I just wonder if Baines would be part of it. Baines was such a great team guy for them last year. It feels like, Dave, there's got to be another shoe to drop here with the Celtics.
Yeah, it seems like they're opening up to be able to take on bad contracts. And they have the ability to do that. They're going to keep harvesting more picks and future assets.
More assets for Boston.
Well, I know.
As sure as the sun rises in the east, Boston will acquire more assets on draft night.
Like those credit card reward points, man. Picks,
well, I mean,
more picks.
What's the market? The market is exactly what you said it is. Everybody's trying to buy the big free agent. We don't know how that's going to come out as far as this guy's off, this guy's off. He stays where he's supposed to or where he is. And now all of a sudden, the teams are going to be scratching over themselves to have to pay somebody.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting how it comes out. And I think Boston's always been, it seems like, ahead of the curve. And they're going against the market.
They're ahead of a curve in terms of getting picks. But will they cash in? That's always been the question with them.
Oh, the key of cashing in is eventually before all their guys need to get paid. I mean, Terry Rozier's going to want to get paid this summer. Jaylen Brown the summer after that. Jason Tatum will be coming up around the corner. That's when your roster gets really expensive and all your flexibility goes out the door. All right, with the 26th pick, the Cavaliers select Dylan Windler, small forward, out of Belmont, John. This feels like it's right in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, Rick Byrd said repeatedly that in all his years, Dylan Windler was the best NBA prospect he ever coached. We're seeing that obviously live up to the billing right now. Now, a throwback in a lot of ways to fundamentals with the way he plays the game. Great moving off screens, using pivots, using shot fakes. Defines the ability to play positionless basketball. And this is somebody who did it at obviously the mid-major level, was responsible for Belmont winning an NCAA tournament game against Temple in what happened to be Fran Dunphy's last game, and also nearly led Belmont to a win over Maryland.
He had college games where he had 18 rebounds to go along with elite perimeter shooting at the NBA perimeter shooting, not college perimeter. He shot it from way out there at 6'7", and he's left-handed. So it's and he's athletic enough. My old assistant Matt Figger, who's at Austin Peay, he'd call me and he'd say, Frank, this kid's as good as anyone that we've played against in the SEC or the Big 12. It's I don't know him a lot, but I know Rick Byrd does a heck of a job. And I know Matt, my old assistant, thought that he was the real deal.
And, you know, if you play for Rick Byrd, and Coach knows this better than I do, you know, an exceptional offensive coach. So this is somebody in the NBA whose IQ is going to be vastly advanced. Another upperclassman, regardless of conference, that withstood the test of time, has real calluses, and is now going to come in ready-made to play.
Frank.
And what you were talking about is another 6'7". So when that ball gets to the third pass after you attack the defense, that closeout, it's late and shot's gone.
I'm just curious, Frank, to get your thoughts. We haven't talked much about John Beilein, the new head coach now with Cleveland, coming from Michigan, taking a pro job for the first time. At the young age of 66 years old, stepping into the NBA. What are your thoughts about how Beilein will handle the NBA coaching experience?
I roomed in a dorm room in Russia with John Beilein. That's all I got to tell you. We shared like a dorm room to have one of those little circular tubs with the kind of curtain that you wrap around yourself in the shower head. That's what we did for 18 days. I'll say this, everyone remembers Coach Beilein from running his kind of Princeton-looking offense. He still runs a little version of that, but he's gone to that spread, pick and roll stuff. His spacing, the preciseness that they play with, I think fits what the NBA's doing, the short shot clock. You know, everyone thinks that he's trying to micromanage the game. He lets those guys go. That Michigan team went. They ran. So I think with those young guards, I think he's a good fit.
Chris, do you think Kevin Love gets moved this summer?
This summer, no. I think if you get into the season, I think it's very possible that they start to shop Kevin Love a little bit. Do you have any dorm room stories, Dave, in Russia, you know?
Didn't you listen to baseball games over there, Frank, on the radio?
No, not in Russia.
3 in the morning.
Any small market CBA dorm room?
Well, you go out to watch the Long Beach Summer League. I'd stay at Long Beach. I'd stay in the dorm for the week and save my minor league team a bunch of money, man.
Perfect. All right, let's catch up again with the guys of the line to hear their best betting advice on NBA free agency.
Ben Teitelbaum and Nick Kostos back here with the line. Let's talk some NBA free agency, which is all of a sudden right around the corner. Now, it feels kind of wrong to bet on the landing spot for a man with a freshly torn Achilles, doesn't it, Nick? But maybe. In some ways, it makes the Kevin Durant predicament a little bit more interesting. Where will he go? What will be his decision? Let's look at the odds. New York Knicks at 3-2. Golden State Warriors staying home, also 3-2. Clippers 3-1. Nets 7-1. Lakers 16-1. And you can throw the Thunder out. There's absolutely no way, I'll say it here, that he is going back, at least right now. But where is Kevin Durant going?
I don't think Kevin Durant's going anywhere. I think he's staying put with the Golden State Warriors. And Ben, I did not think that was the case leading up to the unfortunate Achilles injury. And by the way, shame on the Golden State Warriors for putting KD in that position. That, though, is a story for another time. With the way that his teammates reacted, Steph Curry getting emotional, Klay Thompson getting emotional. And they were all like Klay and Steph were basically like, with Kevin Durant, we're an all-time great team. And without him, we're just very good. So the players were acknowledging the fact that Kevin Durant's the best player on the team. Bob Myers, with that Oscar-nominated press conference that he gave, trying to get Kevin Durant to re-sign. I mean, I do think Bob Myers cares about Kevin Durant. I did think that was a little contrived. But the bottom line is this. I think Kevin Durant felt the love from his teammates, from the organization. All the social media posts from Durant in the aftermath of that injury all seemed to indicate that he was firmly, #DubNation. And with this injury in tow, likely missing all of next year, I think Kevin Durant re-ups with the Golden State Warriors.
Little interesting thing to note, you know who did his surgery?
Oh, the Brooklyn Nets team doctor.
The Brooklyn Nets team doctor. If you like reading tea leaves, there's a lot to be read into that, but I see where you are coming from. How about Kawhi Leonard, fresh off a wonderful victory parade after one of the best runs we've seen in NBA playoffs, obviously Finals MVP. 2 different teams, 2 different conferences setting records there. But will he stay in Toronto? Odds are yes, but just slightly. Clippers rumored there for a long time. Remember, Kawhi from the LA area. Lakers right behind at 6-1. The Knicks and the Nets, just because they have a lot of money in their New York, they're pretty much always on the list. Where's he going? Is he staying? Is he going to LA?
I think Kawhi goes to Los Angeles no matter what. I think Kawhi is out of Toronto. I don't think Kawhi Leonard is the type of guy that's going to win a title like this, and then they have the big parade and he gets sentimental and he's like, okay, I'm staying. This is not going to be a Paul George situation, right? Where Paul George goes to OKC for a year, falls in love with OKC, and re-signs there. I don't think Kawhi cares. Kawhi's a SoCal guy. He's kind of, you've been hearing for years that Kawhi Leonard wants to go to Southern California. So the question becomes, is it the Lakers or is it the Clippers? Now, I'm not going to get into the full machinations and all the finagling of finances that has to be done by the Lakers to make this happen, but it all comes down to this.
I came here for you to get into the finagling of finances.
So I'm going to break it down. This is going to be finance for dummies right now, NBA finance for dummies. Here's what I'm the person watching this right now, here's what you need to know. Anthony Davis has a $4 million trade bonus coming his way to go to the Los Angeles Lakers. If Anthony Davis decides that he wants that $4 million, the Lakers likely are not going to have the funds to sign a third star to join LeBron and Anthony Davis. But if Anthony Davis says, I don't need that $4 million, and they move back the date of the trade, the Lakers could theoretically make it happen and sign a third superstar, whether it's Kyrie or whether it's Kawhi Leonard. To the people out there that want to make the point that Kawhi Leonard does not want to join a super team, that he just won an NBA championship without being on a super team, ask yourself this. If Kevin Durant had been healthy for the NBA Finals, would the Raptors have won an NBA championship? I don't think so. And if I know that, chances are Kawhi Leonard knows it. So if the Lakers are able to clear that space and Davis defers that money, I think Kawhi goes to the Lakers. If he doesn't, I think Kawhi signs with the LA Clippers.
All right, final one for you, and let's keep this one quick because I know talking about Kyrie Irving can get off the rails fast. A lot of indications now have Kyrie going to the Nets. Really, I don't want to say out of nowhere, but this happened over the past month or so. Celtics, about 10 months ago, were a lock. The Knicks, right after that 2-1, they had been the favorites. Then, of course, Lakers, Clippers, still Celtics on the board, and a couple other squads, Mavericks and Raptors. Are the tea leaves here correct that Kyrie, Brooklyn, done deal?
I think that Kyrie will end up going to Brooklyn. Remember, Brooklyn's likely going to lose D'Angelo Russell. Russell might be a target for the Lakers, the team that traded him in the first place, which would be interesting here. Something to note, though, we like to talk about reading the tea leaves. Kyrie fired his longtime agent, signed with Roc Nation, Jay-Z's agency, who used to be a co-owner of the Brooklyn Nets, a minority owner, Jay-Z. So I think that Kyrie Irving, from everything you hear, Kyrie Irving seems earmarked to join the Brooklyn Nets.
And roughly at even money, that might be the best bet we have seen all day here. And remember, don't forget to check out The Line for all your sports gambling needs. We're going to be on a little hiatus for the summer, but we will be back for football season with all the picks that you need. He's just making money on a daily basis, and I'm just trying to tell him.
All right, the 27th pick is in, and the Brooklyn Nets have made the pick. Fiondu Kabengele. And during the break, John, you were very excited about this pick.
This, to me, is the best value pick that we have seen in the 20s. You know, I know obviously Nasir Little going to Portland at 25 looks a lot of, looks solid from a cachet standpoint because it was a lottery pick. But here's somebody right now who is going to be able to be plugged into an NBA rotation, I think, sooner than most would expect because of his ability to play multiple positions, including the stretch 5 spot. And again, another player who redshirted, just like DeAndre Hunter, played 2 years of college basketball and coach, didn't start for his own team last year, and because Leonard Hamilton uses his depth so much, only had 2 games last season where he played 30 minutes or more. His averages in those games, 18 and 8. This right here is a steal at 27.
Yeah, I don't know why Leonard doesn't get more credit for the job he does, developing players and preparing them for when they get the opportunity like this young man's going to have. He does a great job. I've been watching it from his Miami days. His guys get better, his guys grow, and from what I've seen, I watch them play anytime I got a chance because of my friendship with their staff. This young man's, he's all man. He ain't getting out of the way, and that's the kind of guys you need to win with.
Yeah, and traded in a deal now to the LA Clippers.
Just another thing, Chris, watching this guy play and just watching, what he has become at his size, you can't really take for granted his efficiency either with the way he's able to play on the offensive side. He's been over 49% in 2 seasons from the field. I mean, this is an extremely efficient basketball player who, again, did not get the mileage that other people got if obviously he was just a focal point. But that Florida State system is a platoon-like system. They beat you 1 to 10. They don't beat you necessarily 1 through 5.
Anytime we've gotten Florida State kids, whether it's come just to come in for a workout or been on our roster, they all know how to play and they'll guard you. Yeah. And you always appreciate that, you know, the knowledge coming into onto your team.
Well, Chris, I'd love to hit the NBA angle with this just for a second, because the Clippers and Nets, who made this deal, a lot of focus on them going into free agency. How do you see their offseasons playing out? The Nets picked up a 2020 first in this deal that's sending this pick to the Clippers. Do you have any sense on where Kawhi is leaning, and do you think Kyrie to the Nets is a done deal?
No, I mean, anybody thinks they know Kawhi Leonard has never covered Kawhi Leonard. He's just a very difficult guy to get a read on any given night. Even his inner circle, I don't think they all know what he's going to decide at the end of the day. It wouldn't surprise me if he went back to the Raptors on a short-term deal or went to the Clippers on a full 4-year max-level deal. He could do any of these things right now. Kyrie's a little bit more complicated. I think Kyrie wants to play for the Nets, but I don't think the Nets want just Kyrie, because if you have Kyrie Irving, I don't know how you feel about it, Dave, I don't know that he and D'Angelo Russell could play together. I think that's 2 guys that are a little too ball dominant to have a successful on-court relationship.
And a lot of pressure there. Both of them getting big deals, and would be year 1 of the big, and it was, every week they're going to get asked, is this going to work? Is this going to work? Yeah, we're supposed to be together for the next 4 years. And that would be tough to see, but they're both terrific players.
Yeah, and like it's what we talked about earlier, though. Sacrifices, you know, you could go into the year and D'Angelo Russell could say, I'm going to sacrifice, I'll be fine, we just want to win. But sacrifices are, especially for a young kid who just became an all-star in his first year.
And we're seeing it play out with the Rockets. What were the questions we asked when, like, can Chris Paul and James Harden really make it work? And they were great together on the floor, but you talk about sacrifice, there's obviously a lot of tension there. Another thing about the Nets, you know, they really came back from the abyss, right? Sean Marks, wheeling and dealing, get this flexibility, get this cap space. I do wonder if there would be some disappointment on Brooklyn's end if what they came away from all of that with was only Kyrie Irving, because I think they've been angling to get 2 guys in there. And I almost think the smarter long-term play for them, keep your own guy, keep Russell. I think Kenny Atkinson has really done a great job with him, and keep him and try to bring in another star instead of, if you get Kyrie, you're almost a worse version of what the Celtics were last year.
Yeah. Dave, I want to get your take, because you mentioned the Rockets, and there's a lot of stuff I hear, you know, just in off-the-record conversations about blow-ups and arguments and fights in the locker room. And I think people are focused on whatever happened between James Harden and Chris Paul at the end of last season. But from your experience, just how many blow-ups in locker rooms go unreported, and how big a deal are they when they happen?
Good question. They happen between players and coaches, and they happen between players and players. And it doesn't happen that often. I think people say, oh, it happens every night. Well, at what level? We have communication just like that. Yeah, that happens all the time. Generally, players aren't going to yell at each other. Once you shower, it's over. But there's going to be that time where the game ends before you hit the shower. You probably got media in there if you do want to do it after, whatever. That is the hot time. And in those things that are said during that time right there, 15, 20 minutes, you cannot take those personally, and you cannot say things personally. And once that's over, then it needs to be over.
I tell you, one time, as a ball boy, I once got in between Irvin Johnson, the other Irvin Johnson, not Magic.
New Orleans.
Yes. Yeah. And who was it? I think it was Glenn Robinson in Milwaukee. They both came running at each other. I was in the middle, and I ducked underneath the training table to get away from them. I was 20-year-old version of me saying no part of 7-footers running at each other.
Yeah, to your point, I worked for somebody who would not address the team after the game. And as an assistant, I went in there to change my clothes or whatever, and it was really tense on bad days. So I make it a point to make sure that as soon as the game ends, I don't do anything but sprint into the locker room, because I want to be able to, if I feel there's something going on, to diffuse it so we can handle it with no emotion the next day.
I would like to get your guys' opinion, because I think for the Rockets, what's been interesting is there's a lot of talk, and not just after that Golden State loss, what was being said, but, you know, there were reports that when Chris Paul is on the floor, you know, he's telling Mike D'Antoni, hey, keep James Harden on the bench. I want another couple minutes by myself. I mean, how do you navigate something like that, where these guys who you need to form a partnership are almost like they want their own time to shine?
Yeah, he deals with a different animal than me. That's you know, it's Chris Paul's 14-year veteran, all-star. You know, that's a different dynamic. In college basketball, that happens at times. I had a guard, I'm not going to tell you which one, that had been with me for 3 years, and I was trying to play this really talented kid that wasn't fitting with him, but I figured I could make it fit. And he came up to me in the middle of a game, maybe 6 games into the season, and he told me, he says, I think I know what you're trying to do, but I'm just going to tell you, if you keep playing him, take me out of the game. And I said, so-and-so, get that guy out of the game. I took that guy out of the game real fast. And so it's sometimes we make things try to fit, and they don't fit. And that's where the analytics, that's where they don't work. Analytics aren't people. You know, they don't have to go in the locker room after the game.
Dave, let me ask you this, because there seems to be an impasse between Mike D'Antoni and the Rockets right now. I mean, how significant is it for a coach to go into a season coaching on the last year of his contract?
Very difficult. Very difficult to do that. You want to have the years on your contract left. That's not the only thing that gives you credibility, but it does give you credibility. When the salary cap's at, what is it, 125?
Yeah.
And coaches do very well, no question. But this guy is making 35, and he says, me or you, you're going to be the one that's leaving here. And because you only got 1 year, there's not a big-time commitment by the organization there. And I don't know how this case works out, and I hope it works out. He's a terrific coach, and Daryl's really good. And I want him to finish out 5 years from now with Houston. And if it's not going to work out in Houston, I hope he has the ability to go somewhere else and be successful. I don't want Mike D'Antoni just to be never heard from again. He's too good. He's too good.
I just want to say it. I'm not going to put Dave on the spot, but we got a lot of ownership groups in the NBA that I think, frankly, deserve more criticism, because if the Rockets do break up, there's going to be a lot of questions about Mike D'Antoni's system. There's going to be a lot of questions about, James Harden, Chris Paul. Did they do enough to make it work? I mean, last year, Houston, Tillman Fertitta can come out in the media and say whatever he wants. That was a team that was ducking the luxury tax. You know what would help a guy like Dave Yeager if the owners spent, whatever it took to keep a team together? It's Tillman Fertitta who all these reports about the moment they signed Chris Paul's contract, he hated it. Well, what does that do for a player if coming from up top, your owner is complaining to people about how much you're getting paid? What's happening to the Rockets right now, there's going to be a lot of attention on the players, but I think their ownership group deserves just as much criticism for how things have played out there. And if those guys are setting a bad culture for the organization, it spills out onto the floor.
All right, let's go back to the draft for a second. Golden State on the clock. They pick a go. They selected Jordan Poole, shooting guard out of Michigan. John, what are your thoughts on Jordan Poole?
He has the requisites to be a combo guard at the NBA who could make shots. Most well known in college and basketball circles for the shot he made when Michigan beat Houston at the buzzer in last year's NCAA tournament. Again, another player who felt that he probably would have a chance to be a lottery pick if he came back for another year of school, but wanted to start his professional clock. There's elements, I think, that he can improve on in terms of his ability to move without the basketball, to be somebody who can be a consistent player on both ends of the floor, but a guy who has a chance to be a big-time shot maker when he gets more adept at coming off screens, squaring his shoulders, and finishing.
Frank, any thoughts on Jordan Poole?
Yeah, we played him. He's a hard shot maker. He kind of... he has the ability to let go of that ball, and everyone's saying bad shot, and the ball goes in the basket. He's got to be more consistent with making the normal shots, and he's got to be better defensively. I thought that was something that his last year wore on as he became a featured player. I don't think he guarded as well as maybe he needed to for that team to play its best at the end of the year. But once again, young kid. He's 2 years removed from high school, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure he was a sophomore this year. But he's a hard shot maker. I think he's a good player.
Well, that's interesting that you mentioned, younger, because I'm curious, John, how NBA ready is he? Because the Warriors, they need bodies next year. How NBA ready do you think he is?
Well, I think you look at the situation with, Jacob Evans not getting a lot of minutes, the kid from Cincinnati, a year ago. I think you're going to have two guys right there where one of them is going to have to give Golden State mileage given the circumstances.
I thought Jacob Evans not being able to play really hurt them.
Yeah, I mean, Jacob Evans was somebody who, you know, when you looked at Cincinnati his last year, what he was able to do defensively, what he was able to do at running an offense. Not a lot of people, you know, looked at him as a Golden State as a potential facilitator, but he was running Cincinnati's offense at the end of that season. You know, those are two guys who were both late first-round picks around the same spot that you got to hope one of them produces next year.
Yeah, no question about that. The Warriors, well, it could be an opportunity to play, though, too, for Golden State, with Klay Thompson likely to miss most of next season. 29th pick is in. The Spurs have selected Keldon Johnson out of Kentucky. San Antonio, Dave, as we say, you know, probably going to be a 20-year NBA pro, probably.
You just got to assume they're making the right
call. Assume they're making the right call.
Believe that they mined something that, you know, somebody else missed here.
But then look, no, it's a tough guy to miss, John, because this is a kid that played at Kentucky. You know, a lot of visibility playing there.
Yeah, a lot of visibility. An unbelievable, intangible player, can make threes, has a Corey Maggette type feel to his game, that type of 3-and-D guy. Somebody with high level, you know, 50-50 ability. You know, when Keldon Johnson gets involved for a loose ball, it's not 50-50, it's 85-15.
I think it's a great pick. I'm a big Keldon Johnson fan. In high school, he goes to Oak Hill Academy. They got a bunch of really good players, and he's the best player on a team with a lot of good players. And he goes to Kentucky. There were segments during this season where he was their best player.
Right.
You know, he's a competitive guy that can make shots. He's got size. Look at a picture of P.J. Washington standing next to him and Tyler Hero. They're all the same size. They're big, and he's an adequate ball handler. He's got to get better at that. He's not great at that, but he's a tough kid that competes, fits what they do.
All right, John, though, he fell for a reason, though. He's sitting there at the number 29 pick. Where are the weaknesses in him?
There are some weaknesses from people I talked to about his ability to stay engaged in basketball games and to be able to consistently be there for 40 minutes. One thing that an NBA team told me about Keldon Johnson that was interesting is he is going to have to be in a scenario, game in, game out, where he is going to always have to be bought in to exactly what he needs to do. This is somebody, again, who is going to have to be an all-star in his role. He is going to have to embrace everything that, you know, he is set out to do on both sides of the floor. That includes making open threes, playing defense, and rebounding the ball. A very underrated rebounder as well.
Part of, I think, San Antonio's secret sauce over the years has been turning guys, you know, from the draft or whatever into shooters, whether it was Danny Green, even Kawhi Leonard, questions about his three-point shot. The name we hear a lot, Chip Engelland, and kind of the shot doctor. Can you give us some insight, Dave? What is it about their, do guys around the league, what is it about their program? What do you guys know about what they do that they're able to turn guys into shooters seemingly better than some other teams in the league?
I'll tell you one thing that people don't understand on the deal is if you're a player and you're playing for San Antonio and we're all playing for San Antonio and you come in to complain about having to do this work, all four of us would kick your tail. Now, you might go someplace else, some other cultures where you came in and complained, and we would co-sign your BS. That's what the culture is at San Antonio. There is no messing around. You're going to get to do your work. You're going to get it done. In fact, we'll come out and we're going to help you as well. Great staff, always have hired very, very well. Chip is still there, does a terrific job. They push them, but they get character guys, and they get guys that are bought in. So we'll see how this one comes out for them.
Yeah, Keldon Johnson going at pick number 29. The final pick is in. The Cleveland Cavaliers, they have traded up to pick number 30, and they take Kevin Porter, the shooting guard, out of USC with the 30th pick in the first round. John, what do you know about Kevin Porter?
Mercurial, Chris. As mercurial a prospect that there is in this draft. You know, he patents his game after James Harden. Had 17 on 8 shots in the Pac-12 tournament. You saw him really scratch the surface of his potential there, but an inconsistent player, did not get along very well with Andy Enfield last year, the head coach at USC, or some of his teammates, because there's a lot of questions right now as to whether or not Kevin Porter can play organized, regular basketball at a consistent level. I do know from talking to several people that Cavs GM Kobe Altman did a lot of research on him in the last 24 to 48 hours. They weren't going to take him, obviously, at 5 overall, but not a surprise to me that Cleveland made the move to go after Kevin Porter.
Frank perhaps could not play organized basketball. Other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play?
I'll say this, based on what he just described, good luck with John Beilein. Good luck with John Beilein. I've never seen him play. I've read about him. I did a little research, obviously, knowing I had to come here with you guys today. I'm troubled with the fact that he was suspended multiple times that at the same place. That's troubling to me. Hopefully that's a young man that can eventually get better from those mistakes, stop whatever got him distracted. John Beilein is unbelievably good. But I can tell you this, John Beilein's got no patience for guys that are bad teammates.
Well, and another thing, too, that's alarming to me, it's the same thing I had with the reaction to Romeo Langford. It felt like protecting his stock and making sure that what was right for him was much more important than his team winning at the highest level possible. Those are two things that were definitely consistent with those two players.
I spent 18 days with the man in a dorm room in Russia with a team that practiced 5 times. I know what bad teammates do to him. And it's going to be hard for him to get along with John for 82 games. If
what time of night did you listen to those Cardinals games?
3 a.m.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. When I see John Beilein next year, I'm going to ask him about those 18 days. Russia.
He's got stories.
That's for sure. I want to get to our takeaways of the first round, but a guy still sitting there at the green room was beginning the second round was Bol Bol, hanging out in that green room. This was a guy, John, with a lot of question marks around him, medically, size-wise. How surprised are you that
Not surprised. You know, I said it. I said he wasn't
it.
going to go in the first 25. I mean, Bol Bol's motor, and I know this from watching him in practice, has always been in question. Bol Bol's ability to guard both at the 5 spot in the paint and on the perimeter has been in question. And, Coach, I said it to you, if he's going to be consistently on the floor at 7'2", he's got to be Kristaps Porzingis. I don't think anybody saw that type of potential in Bol Bol. And another thing, too, which makes you more alarmed to take him, Oregon's season changed when Bol Bol gets hurt, Kenny Wooten breaks his jaw. They get Kenny Wooten back healthy. All of a sudden, Kenny Wooten becomes their shot-blocking 5, and they play small with Lewis King at the 4. Without Bol Bol, they were a team that was 15-12, and then went on to win 10 games in a row, win the Pac-12 tournament, when they beat Washington by 20 in the title game, and then go to the Sweet 16. Without him.
Frank, you surprised to see Bol Bol get through the first round untaken?
He had issues in high school. I'm not trying to pick on one or the other, but he got suspended at his high school. And, you know, he had great moments in AAU basketball. But you don't have to coexist. Here's the thing with AAU basketball. You don't practice. You don't go home after the weekend and practice with those same guys till next month. So you're not around the coach and the players for 4 or 5 weeks at a time. When you're going through a whole 82 games, you got to walk in that room every single day with the same group of guys. If you can't do your job every day, like Dave was saying, there's going to be guys in that locker room who will say, hey, man, we're tired of your nonsense, man, and starting with the coach. And that's, I don't want to judge a young man, but that appears to have been a problem, and his motor has been the biggest weakness that he's had.
Is there any thon maker to him, John? I mean, I don't want to compare guys that kind of have that same body type.
I saw more want-to in Thon than I did in Bol Bol.
Really?
I saw more want-to in Thon. Watching him on the AAU circuit consistently, I saw definitely more dog and more want-to and fight. There was gunpowder in Thon Maker's diet.
and here's what I worry about with these young kids. They take them from this school and put them at that school. And then when things don't work out at that school, they take them and they put them in another school. Bol Bol went to multiple high schools, and I worry about that. And maybe that has something to do with his lack of motor, that they haven't allowed him to stay somewhere and learn how to work.
Well, he has that in common with Thon Maker, that if he's bounced around high schools early in his career. All right, that was the last pick of the first round. Madeline, Jake, what are your biggest surprises from tonight?
I think the first thing that stands out, the glaringly obvious surprise, was the Cameron Johnson pick. I mean, that was a significant reach for the oldest player in this draft, 23 years old. He was not even one of the 24 players invited to the green room. So that was a huge shock, I think, for everyone that he was taken at 11 by the Phoenix Suns. Also, Bol Bol, I mean, you guys were talking about that as well. He's still in the green room. Jake, I know you and I were talking about this when we saw the Clippers trade up. We both kind of thought, okay, maybe that's what they're going for, and they didn't.
I had heard that this morning that Bol was a trade target for the Clippers. Kabengele and him are kind of similar prospects. They're both, long athletes that can shoot it. So it's not a big surprise that Kabengele was the pick. But I did think that Bol would end up going here in the first. His medical came back pretty clean from teams after he worked out in Thousand Oaks last week. It was like an invite-only thing to a couple teams around the league. He shot the ball well. I mean, when you look at him on paper, he's kind of like Kristaps Porzingis, 7'2", can handle, can shoot. But as Coach Martin suggested, there's a lot of off-court questions about maturity, if he actually really loves playing basketball. To me, the biggest surprise was Chuma Okeke going at 16. I love Chuma, as we talked about earlier, but nobody was expecting him to go that high. And talking to people around the league as the draft unfolded, it was definitely a shocker. And I think it's going to be a great value pick. He's not going to play this year, but no one was expecting him to go a couple picks short of the lottery, and that to me was pretty surprising.
I'm also pretty surprised that Calvin Johnson pulled a wardrobe change as he was drafted. But also shout out to Zion for the hat tip to LeBron with that like modernized LeBron look with that all white look. I don't know. I thought that was pretty strong.
Casual summary, so.
Yeah, you know what? It was good. It was a good look. What did you guys think?
All right, thanks, Madeline. Great job over there with you guys tonight. Let me put it to you, fellas. Surprises, takeaways, however you want to phrase it from tonight.
Wow. Surprises from tonight. You know, I'm surprised that somebody like Bruno Fernando, who's built like an Adonis carved out of ice, did not go in the first round. I thought there was a real market for him, especially when you talk about, you know, the ability to have somebody who could play the 5 spot. And I thought that we saw a real dip in this draft. I thought after the first 10 or 11 picks, I think we knew that there were some guys who had a chance to be good pieces to the puzzle after the main troika. But, you know, beyond that, I just think that for all intents and purposes, we started our conversation tonight talking about how you might be able to get guys between 30 and 45 who are more productive down the road than guys maybe between 15 and 25. I wouldn't be shocked if that happens.
Troika and gunpowder in their food has made a strong appearance on the mouth of John Rothstein tonight. Frank, what did you think?
I'm surprised Zion went #1.
Yeah.
No, I'm I guess disappointed, and I'm biased because his dad's a friend. But when you draft potential, and you take competitiveness, length, and skill, I think those are 3 things that are important to the NBA. Nick Claxton fits the bill. I just knew he was going to. Fortunate, I've coached against some guys, and guys that have played in the NBA. He's just needing that strength, that component that comes, and it's going to add. And his competitiveness, his skill, and his length, and his ability to run, to chase the ball. You're talking about a guy that averaged almost 10 rebounds a game in college. In the spread pick and roll system, we're just running to the rim and chasing offensive rebounds. Disappointed for him, a little surprised that some GM didn't take a chance on him. High character kid, too.
Rohan, what'd you think?
I was kind of surprised that we didn't see a lot of trades involving actual players. I think a lot of teams were trying to package their picks, headed into today to try to get guys, and we didn't really see any of that. I know, a lot of talk going in, is there going to be a record movement draft? Obviously, there was kind of those smaller scale deals, but we didn't see teams, trying to make any big plays, try to acquire a guy, like a Drew Holiday or someone like that. So we didn't see those moves. I'm curious when those will go down. Another one of my takeaways is just my emerging friendship with Dave Yeager. I think we really a lot was established here tonight.
You didn't say that about Frank Miller.
Yeah, I think Frank and I we reached some common ground by the end of the night. And I'm happy about that. I think we still have some steps to take. I feel like I still have to prove myself to Frank Martin. I'm a big fan.
I thought we're South Florida.
All right, there we go. That's right, my South Florida guy. All right, perfect. Yeah. So I think me, Frank, Dave, we might hit the road after this and just see where things go.
So Chris and I aren't in the circle of trust.
I don't know about
he threw you a tuna fish.
Yeah. I don't know about but
I don't even know what the hell is going on right now. Dave, your biggest takeaway?
A couple things. I agree. I did think that there was going to be more players involved as teams positioned themselves for free agency. There wasn't. You mentioned Aaron Baines. There was not a lot of movement here tonight. There has been the last couple days, but not as much as I thought. I thought Minnesota got aggressive and jumped up and went after a player that they really liked. You don't see that all the time. I feel like them and Phoenix are both in the market for a point guard. And they went and got a wing, and I'm happy for them. And I think Kobe White to Chicago, I think that's going to be fantastic. I think you put him and Zach LaVine and Chris Dunn and say, hey, boys, here you go. 2 of you 3 are going to play. Let's see how this works out, because I think they're going to be exciting going forward.
Let me ask you something. I know you're not a GM, but Aaron Baines opts into his contract at a relatively low number in Boston. And at the time, I was told it was because he wanted to play in Boston. You think Aaron Baines wakes up tomorrow morning with any kind of grievance that the Celtics dumped him on
bitter,
Phoenix?
perhaps?
Perhaps.
Bitter?
I mean, he could have made some money this offseason if he entered free agency on his own.
Hard to say. They know the market and what they can get and what they've been promised. So that's what they know.
All's fair, I guess. I am disappointed to pivot it back to the Celtics that that's what they walked away with. It's more of a culmination of an entirely rough season for Boston, with everything that happened in the regular season to fizzling out in the playoffs, to all the drama that's emerged in the afterfact, to the likelihood that Kyrie Irving is gone, and now they punt on one of the draft picks to 2020, and they walk away with two guys who I'm not sure are going to play for them next year, and how they fit. Yeah, how they fit into this mix. So it's, it really is amazing where the Celtics were this time last year, with everybody talking about them as a contender, and now not being entirely sure exactly where they're going to go. So that's it for me. And that's it for Sports Illustrated's NBA Draft Special. Thanks to all of you for joining us. For John Rothstein, Frank Martin, Dave Yeager, Rowan Nadkarni, Madeline Burke, and Jake Fisher, I'm Chris Mannix. Have a great night.